Okay, good afternoon. We'll call this special board meeting for Wednesday, April 16th, 2025 to order at 4:02 p.m. Roll call, please, Ms. Olson.
Director Bankus?
Director Bankus is here. She must have just stepped out.
Here. Director Carey?
Here.
Director Hafley?
Here.
Director Jorgensen?
Here.
Director Malpacum?
Here.
Director Nelson?
Here.
Director Ott?
Here.
All 7 board members in attendance in person for the special meeting. Please join me as we observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Director Jorgensen, can you please make the motion to adopt the agenda?
I move the Board of Education adopt the.
Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah,
I
they
move that the Board of Education adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Director Bankus?
Director Bankus is still not here.
Director Carey?
Aye.
Director Hafley?
Aye.
Director Jorgensen?
Aye.
Director Malpacum?
Aye.
Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Ott?
Aye.
The ayes have it. The agenda has been adopted as presented. I'm going to invite Principal George Smith up here to the podium to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the special reports, the first item on the agenda is the Jenkins Middle School update. We promised weekly update. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent for the recent update.
Good evening, board. Good evening to our community. We don't have much to share off of last week's town hall, but I do want to codify it here for those who weren't at the town hall again, and be able to let you know how excited we are about some of the renderings that are coming in for Jenkins. As that summary, I got it working. Our commitment's always safety first, keeping our students together for their learning experience as our highest priority, and then minimizing those changes and the relocations for staff, families, and students, and ensuring that Jenkins continues to be a community regardless of the number of buildings that it happens to be housed in. I think those that have experienced the displacement this year can say that we've done that with great aplomb, and I'm very proud of those staff and those families and students for that commitment. Much of the conversations right now have been about the changes that we need to make for partial occupancy to return in August, and then for a long-term fix for August of 26 for a full 3-grade experience again at Mitchell. The gym and media center, those contract awards were made last week during the meeting from the Board of Education. We appreciate that. Those plans are underway, and we should start seeing what I'll just say, men, women, and equipment on site making those repairs in very short order. We are working the mobile unit placement for partial occupancy. And I just saw yesterday, was shared with our team, a couple of the new academic wing renderings for Jenkins that are very exciting to have the square footage of 21st century learning space for Jenkins to return to a 3-year building with opening of August 26th. I'm going to go back a slide just a second to highlight the note here on the bottom. Our strong partnership with our architects and our general contractor are working and have already made the submissions with the regional and state building departments and the Colorado Springs Fire Department to ensure that we are meeting those requirements for, 1, both partial occupancy in August, and then 2, the timeline and the items that need to be corrected for complete reoccupancy for August of 26. Thank you to the robust community that showed up for us last week. We had matriculating fifth grade students that'll be sixth graders next year at Jenkins there. We had sixth graders who are currently at Russell who will be returning to Jenkins that were there. And we had seventh graders that are currently at Doherty who will be returning to Doherty next year for their eighth grade. We had their parents there as well. What I will say, and I'll say it publicly, I do know that change is hard and we do appreciate the flexibility of our community. I will tell you to a T, the children constantly say how they feel supported and engaged in the environments that they are in. And those of you that wonder how can you have a seventh or eighth grader in a high school, they have been separated and each one of them says, but mom or dad, I really like my time at Doherty. So I appreciate those students being flexible for their learning environment. And that we are going to meet in the third week of May. There's a small bullet there on the left with a final community meeting. We'll do the same thing at Doherty for the amount of people that we want to be able to support. And we'll break out even earlier to be able to discuss classrooms and flow, because yes, bringing partial occupancy back to the building will require some mobile units, and we will, by the third week of May, have determined what those classroom assignments will be and what those schedules will look like for next year. So with great appreciation for continued transparency and communication on all things Jenkins. That concludes the update on Jenkins.
Okay, thank you. And again, appreciate all the parents and community members that showed up last week for the town hall meetings. It was well attended, and some of the concerns or questions that were raised were answered by the administrative staff as well. Any feedback or questions from the board on this topic at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda on the topic, which is Mitchell High School presentation, and Mitchell is on the state watch list, and Superintendent Gall has to present to the State Board of Education next month. So this is a preview of what Superintendent Gall has as far as presenting to the State Board of Education, and also what the future plans are for Mitchell. Superintendent Gall, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I like we're on slide 38 already. Questions? No, just kidding. First, I want to acknowledge both Area Superintendent Callback and Principal Smith for their hard work in this presentation. We're going to do a little bit of a tag team. We kind of want to go through all the slides first, and then we'll take questions from the board. This is a hybrid of some of the information that we shared at our SAC meeting a couple of weeks ago. I know both Director Ott and Director Bankus were in attendance there. And it is really the foundation of what we'll be bringing to the state board. We've eliminated some of the items that the state asks for to get more of a conversation here with the board instead of just answering the state. Can you go to the next slide? So I'm going to drive a little bit here from the beginning, and then Sherry and George will go into some of the depth of the items in the school. The Mitchell Challenge has been long-standing for our community, and we are on the clock. And so when we went and we talked to the SAC about a month ago, we had to kind of just re-educate everyone that says we're not making decisions in the dark. These are not just ideas, and we're not just asking for an audience from the state board. This is our statute requirement to deliver a plan to the state board at this time. Sherry has really been the lead point of contact with CDE, so you'll hear the term Andy or Mr. Swanson several times. We have been engaged with Andy and his team for the entirety of the 3 years that I've been here in understanding what the challenges have been at Mitchell with its existing innovation plan and the progress that it has made and the progress that it has not made. I start with this slide just to reset everybody's expectation that by statute, these are the 5 actions that the state board can take because of where we are on the clock. You can do management by a public or private entity. You can use innovation status. You can choose to close the school. You can choose to convert the school to a charter school, or you can convert the school to a community school. To refresh, we had made a similar pitch on Galileo to the state board in December or January, I forget exactly when, which our recommendation in concert with our partnership with Andy and his team was to make that conversion to a community school. That was well received. We had a unanimous vote. We expect the same type of relationship in the items that we are briefing for your information tonight. That again, this isn't us wondering what the state is really recommending. This has been a several-year partnership based upon state review panel visits, executive summaries, and so on and so forth. And so really, to cut to the bottom line here, we want to continue with our innovation status, but we want to bring in an external management partner to help us on our instructional integrity in the building, which happens to be the same instructional empowerment company that we've been using for most of our instructional strategies in the district. That would give us continuity that Adams, Galileo, and Mitchell all have the same instructional partner, which I think has been one of the pieces missing, is coherence and alignment on strategy. I don't say that with any disregard for any other company or institution that could have fit that bill. It's just that it becomes very difficult for George to hear one thing from somebody that's different from what he hears in RPD, that is different from what Sherry is getting in her own professional growth, and that is different than our overall MIS 1, 2, or 3 as a district. So we're very confident that the state is in agreement with us on the strategies that we want to go forward with, and we'll cover some of the data there. But I want to start with that slide that lets people know that the gravity of the situation when you're on the clock for 5, 6 years running with the state is we're already in innovation status. We've made a community school initiative for a middle school. We're not going to replicate that immediately at the high school. So our choices are really have a management partner, close the school, or charter the school. I'll say it now and I'll say it again. I do not think it is healthy for our community to recommend the closure of Mitchell High School. I believe we are a 4 comprehensive school system. That is how we have been designed ever since the decision was made about Wasson, and we are still feeling the ramifications within our community of those changes. There are still people who come up to me that will say, you shouldn't have closed Wasson, you should have done something else. So my intent was to take school closure off of that list. Again, when I look at what the demographer has shared with us, although the numbers at Mitchell right now are only in the 700s to 800s, and that's only at about 45 to 50% occupancy, we still have 8,000 children that live inside District 11 that do not choose District 11. So yes, over the coming years, we have less children per household. That's 8,000 will become 7,500, will become 7,000, will become 6,500. But closing a high school right now on paper could work, but it doesn't give room for people to choose District 11 again in the future. We would max out our 3 high schools. They would all be at 95 to 100% occupancy, and we will have quit on what has been a legacy, historical, wildly successful, at one point rated the top high school, not only in Colorado Springs, but within the top 10 for the state. We believe that we can return Mitchell to that glory as a traditional run comprehensive school. I also want to talk briefly about the charter school. We are a pro-charter district. We believe in a portfolio approach. It is a challenge for charter schools to deliver high schools at the comprehensive scale. I do think that if this initiative, innovation status, coupled with the external academic management partner that we already know and we trust, if that does not get traction, we'll be on the clock now for 2 years again. I do think we have to think more strategically about, are there RFPs that we can run to get charters to make pitches on whether or not they can run that school better than this is as our best effort. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide, that's the agenda that we're going to cover today. This is slides that we use to help the state board understand where we are. This is a familiar slide. You've all seen it before. We're on the back end of decreasing enrollment averaging. We have added kids 2 years in a row. We project to add kids again next year as well. But we are still woefully short of where we were in the late 90s. And again, yes, there are less children per household, but most of that enrollment loss has been due to choice. We have been passive to choice. We believe that you'll see some of the things that we're doing at Mitchell now, that we believe once we can get rigor back into the classroom and show those academic results, people will start to buy into the offerings that we have there. Thank you. Next slide. You've seen that slide before. I won't cover it. That's just for the state. Again, that's also for the state. We're very proud of the growth that we have. We share this slide with the state just for the state board to see where Mitchell sits. And if you understand the local economy here, the further south and the further east you get in our city, the more challenged it can become for our families. And while Adams actually, for us, falls within the central, we sit right now with Adams, Galileo, and Mitchell, who are all in the actual same feeder for families, being our three schools with still the largest challenge to overcome. And Mitchell, again, inheriting kids from both Swigert and from Galileo every year who are not on grade level. The further away you are from that grade level and the less number of years you have to correct it, the more impossible the challenge. Next slide. This is these next two slides. This is the state's 4 domains of school improvement. And what I want you to see is this emphasis on culture, this emphasis on the leadership, the emphasis on talent and instruction. As you see now, if you go to the next slide, our vision on, on our academic strategy, on, again, that relationship of best first instruction. The number one way to student achievement is access to high quality instruction. Go back a slide for me, who's ever driving. That's riddled through here. They just have a 4-legged stool, and we happen to have a 3-legged stool. But when we briefed this at Galileo, there were tons of overlap between the two. Next slide, and then next slide again. Okay, over to you, Sherry, and to George.
There we go. Thank you, Superintendent Gall and Board Directors, for allowing us this opportunity to present an early version of what will go to the state in just a few weeks at the state board hearing for Mitchell. We are going to take a look at current state at Mitchell. None of this is a big surprise, but I do want to point out that School of Innovation remains one of our bullet points on this slide. Our request to the state will not be to do away with the innovation plan. It will be to couple the innovation plan with the academic external manager partner so that the innovations can support the instructional work that needs to occur at Mitchell so that we can find great outcomes for every one of the students who is represented in this slide and quickly move away from that turnaround status. And so I think many of you have seen Mitchell's mission and vision previously. And there are some celebrations we wanted to bring forward this evening. There are 2 of these especially that I want to just highlight and lift up a bit. Mitchell has been celebrated not only at the local level, but also at the state level for their student-led IEP process. We are fully aware that students, by the time they reach high school, even those students with an IEP, are very aware of both their own personal celebrations and their needs in school. And so Mitchell's special education team has done a phenomenal job over the years of not only allowing, but encouraging and supporting students to lead their own IEP. This is actually a great example of agency. This is a place where students are owning their own data, owning their own needs, and telling us as the adults in the system what they need to achieve so that we can make sure that the plans that we create in collaboration with them are strong on student voice and that students really know exactly where they stand academically and what their next steps are. The other one that I want to highlight, I believe that some of you were at the ribbon cutting just a few weeks ago for our student design courtyards at Mitchell. If you'd been at Mitchell a few years ago, you would have seen that these were not something that we were showcasing, but now are beautifully designed courtyards that students are using. I have been at Mitchell and seen students accessing and using that space outside. But the best part of it really is that our own facilities teams partnered with Mitchell students, again, a great opportunity for student agency, to help students tell us what they wanted in those courtyards, to use it as a learning opportunity around landscape design and outdoor space usage, and to put students in the driver's seat for their own space. And so with that, we're going to move into some of the academic performance and local data. You've seen some of this data both at the state and the local level. We are beginning to see some pretty significant increases in reading performance for students at Mitchell. Math is a lagging indicator, has not yet caught up on that growth. But one of the pieces that we'd like to point out is the strategy that we put in place at Mitchell this year with a couple of opportunities for students to take a practice SAT. That's part of the strategy. Students certainly need to know what's going to be expected of them on the PSAT or the SAT. But the bigger part of the strategy is really helping Mitchell teachers and instructional staff to understand what's expected of students. Their English department has taken that information and run with it. And because their English teachers are teaching at the level that students will be tested at, we are seeing these increases in English performance for Mitchell students. You've heard Dr. Colicky talk about growing the head and shrinking the tail. We're seeing a growing the head in reading and a shrinking the tail in math. We now need to see both of those in both content areas, and that's a place where you're going to hear us talk about our partnership with IE in just a short bit. We're also collecting data from those Horizon practice PSAT and SAT assessments. Teachers are using that data to plan instruction that meets student needs and gets them to a level of rigor that meets what the state is expecting of high school graduates. PSAT and SAT are both great indicators of that, and that's why we're really leaning in on those data components. So with that, I am going to turn it over to George to talk a little bit about attendance and behavior trends that he's seeing at Mitchell over the past 2 to 3 years.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, board. Thank you, Superintendent Gall, for having us tonight. Yeah, in terms of attendance, really, we are seeing an upward trend since 2021 when I entered in as principal. We are currently sitting right around an 88%, which is actually in our Unified School Improvement Plan as the goal, reaching that goal in May of 2025. We've actually been sitting there for most of the year and anticipate meeting that goal of 88. We have already started to develop in the pathway plan Unified School Improvement goals for 25, 26, 26, 27 that will put us into the 90s for attendance. So we're feeling strong about that. In terms of the discipline, information here. This is a comparison. Well, this data represents district level data for all district. There are some similarities and some differences. The one thing that I can acknowledge is that in the top 5, cell phone and tardies remain at the top 2 level for us. And then in terms of the incidents per school year, we did see a big increase in 2021, a decline down in 22, an increase in 23, and a slight increase again in 2025 this year. So we anticipate the incident rates staying below 2022 indicators, but what we are happy about is that in the top 5, we don't have any unsafe behaviors in our top 5 events. Matter of fact, I looked at that data before I got here, and the unsafe events are in single digits for a comprehensive high school of 700 plus students. Yeah, moving on. Okay. I'll move past that one. Do you want to speak to this one, or do you want me to have this one?
I think, let's
Just
go
one
back
slide in
one.
between.
You wanna go back this one?
Skipped it?
This
Yeah.
one here?
There we go.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Sure. The important thing to point out here is we sometimes wonder with behavior data, are we talking about a small group of students who are repeatedly referred to the Office for Behavior Violations? That is not what this data is showing. This is distinct students, and so students are not multiple times counted in this data set.
We've developed a couple of enabling conditions, and this is just to highlight here that our support from Pikes Peak State College remains strong. We started the D11 Promise as the Mitchell Promise, and that has been able to go throughout the system. We found that which was one of the innovations, some of the innovations that we brought to bear at Mitchell have quickly gone to scale across the system. The first innovation that we brought forward was the kind of rebranding of the tag, the teacher, what grant? Teacher.
TAP,
a TAP.
Teacher Acceleration Program.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we turned that into the first innovation, but then this year getting to the strategic staffing or the staffing stabilization grant. You'll see a slide on that as well. Next slide. Why don't you talk about that one, George?
Well, what I can say to this is the district has kept their promise. Superintendent Gall has kept his promise in terms of offering incentives at Mitchell High School for staff member recruitment and retention. This year, the Staffing Stability Grant has been accessed at a great level among our staff, not the 5 personal days that they get, as long as it's approved by the principal, and it's in line with the school improvement plan. Like I said, that has been accessed. We're actually going into our second day of the all-school flex day this weekend on Saturday. And that's where we're going to be digging into the work of unpacking standards and developing plans for maximizing the block heading into 25-26. That's just an example of how we're using this innovation strategy. I'm very pleased to hear that we're going to continue with innovation because it hasn't all been for naught. And so this is part of that in terms of incentivizing recruitment of staff and the retention of staff.
Yeah, I think it's worth highlighting that we have seen, we were kind of stuck in the 70s for our fill rate, and then this last year, we had a statistically significant increase in the number of staff, but I do remind everyone that teaching is the hardest thing to do. Teaching kids that are far behind is even harder, and teaching kids that are far behind when you're understaffed is nearly impossible. And so even with how proud we are of the increase in the staffing stability grant through that innovation to get into the 80%, what we really want to be is we want to be 111% at Mitchell, because we believe that extra 11% is what ensures that kids who need more get more. Without passing any judgment on the efforts of any individual teacher, it just becomes impossible to get to the place that you want to get to. And really what you'll see here on the next series of slides has been what we got out of our school comprehensive needs assessment from our partners with instructional empowerment. And they'll say what we have long posited, which is we're still struggling on rigor in the classroom. And that's just not acceptable when it is a school within a system where a system has committed to the #1 way to student achievement is access to high quality instruction. So we've been unable through innovation plan alone to actually bring high quality instruction, and that's really the purpose of our intent to bring to the state that we need this external partner to ensure that we can get there. I promise you George isn't sitting there with his feet up on his desk, nor is anybody on his staff, nor are any of his teachers not trying as hard as they can. We just need that extra attention to detail to be able to ensure that we can get it. Next slide.
And so what we want to ensure that the board and our audience recognizes is that the district strategy and Mitchell High School's strategy are the same strategy. They're well aligned. This is the district's Major Improvement Strategy 1. It will also be Mitchell's, is Mitchell's Major Improvement Strategy 1 as well. This should lead to not being confused about which partner we're following, which language we're using, any of those sorts of pieces. We are aligned as both a school and a district. And so just a few weeks ago, Instructional Empowerment spent a full 2 days with a team at Mitchell High School. George and I were both part of that team for multiple of those sessions. They did classroom observations, they observed the buses picking up students, they observed lunchtime, they did panel discussions with leaders, teachers, and students, spent 2 days really going deep into all of the current systems at Mitchell. And so the initial data from the SCNA, the conditions assessment, tells us that we absolutely have a strength at Mitchell on that far left-hand side for conditions for learning and rigorous standards. It's what George spoke to in the behavior piece. Mitchell is a very safe school. Mitchell has incredibly compliant students. We want to move students into being more engaged in their learning, but the conditions are ripe for us to do so. The bar on the far right, data for continuous improvement, also shows that Mitchell is collecting the data that they need. They're starting to dig into those conversations more deeply with teachers about using that data for instructional planning on short cycles. think we have a PLC meeting today, and that data leads to instructional planning for lessons that take place later in the week. This isn't long-term, it is very short-term. The 3 bars in the middle are the places where we will focus our work with instructional empowerment as we're getting started with them. Those speak to the rigor piece that we just heard about, that our students at Mitchell do need and are telling us that they need a more rigorous environment for learning, and those statements from students are absolutely supported by what we see in this needs assessment. We also see that we have a leadership team at Mitchell that I'm going to quote right from the slide, is inventing uniquely situated approaches to the work. They are continually leaning in, looking at how students are performing and growing and achieving, and when students aren't meeting the goals that we're setting, we continue to look for innovative approaches that change those outcomes. It's again a reason why we want to pair innovation with an academic management company, because those two together help us find those uniquely situated approaches to student outcomes. And so we want to, there we go. We want to make sure that we point out that both the leadership team and teachers benefit from this partnership. We all receive coaching. The leadership team at the school receives on-site, on-the-ground, multiple times per week coaching, and the teacher coaches are in classrooms with teachers. They're planning side by side with them, they are observing instruction, in some cases they are teaching side by side with them to model a strategy, to co-teach, and then release it back to the teacher. So wanted for you to see that this plan and this strategy ensures support for everyone at the school, and quite honestly, for us at the district level as well, so that our support of George meets the same mark where Mitchell students need us to be. This is a reminder of the 5 pillars of turnaround that are evident in Mitchell's innovation plan. These have not changed in the past few years, but are very well aligned to the high leverage items that our partner will engage with quickly as soon as they are on site and working at Mitchell with us. We just wanted to remind the board that we have 8 CTE pathways and 17 options for concurrent enrollment through 3 different universities at Mitchell. And so we are continually working to expand those to make sure that students at Mitchell have the same wide range of opportunities as students at other schools. And Superintendent Gall, do you want to talk about D11 Promise? Do you want me to keep going?
I think I covered it earlier, just that we started this at Mitchell because we saw that there was a need, and then we realized there was a need across the system. I think it marries 2 things that are important for the board and the community. One, innovation can create change. It was through the lens of Mitchell when the Promise Scholarship was first brought to my attention. It had limited philanthropic dollars associated with it, and its initial ask was, can you do this district-wide? And I said, I can't, because there wasn't enough dollars associated with it. And I said, let's go after, my definition of equity, when you put your money where your mouth is. And I said, so let's start at Mitchell, because we had enough philanthropic dollars for us to be able to get us the matching funds through the MLO to ensure that kids that were eligible could persist and be successful. We were able to do that, and then the philanthropy was so impressed at the quick uptake to what we were doing at Mitchell that we were able to then bring that to scale across the district. And so things that we start at Mitchell, then we see that they work, we do bring them to scale. And then the second piece to that was we fundamentally, although not part of this briefing, but 2 slides earlier, the CTE pathways and the concurrent enrollment. We're not trying to get kids to graduation. We're trying to get kids after graduation. We're a pre-K to 14 system of which we only own them till 12th grade. And so the fact that we're offering 17 concurrent enrollment opportunities through 3 different universities, that in itself is not revolutionary, but it is at Mitchell, because we weren't doing that some years ago. Some years ago, you could only get access to dual and concurrent enrollment through your higher performing comprehensive high schools. So we treat Mitchell with the same expectation. We don't treat Mitchell with kid gloves. which goes all the way back to the 83% of the staff filled. We have to have a system where we can ensure that children have high-quality instruction. And right now, we don't have that. We've exercised the amount of muscle that we have in our ability to deploy central office. I appreciate the work that Area Superintendent Callback has done in partnership with George and her staff, that we do have department heads that are lending time, but that is of their own limited time. And so the solution, much to a very early slide some years ago, was schools with the most needs in the cable package get the most amount of support. Our pitch to the state is the way to change the vector and the outcome for Mitchell is to invest and ensure that high quality instruction occurs, and don't be confused about anything else. The children are ready. Can you go all the way back to the bathtub slide? The SCNA. We talk about that we're super excited that children are ready for instruction and that we have data to be able to review, but I got a call to everybody. Neither of those two columns on the left and right are above 50% of that scale score. So I'm just telling you that the thing that we've been able to build, that George has been able to do for the last several years, is stabilize the building, that now it's on us to ensure that we and he can get, train, and sustain the staff to ensure that kids get the same academic experience at Mitchell that they do anywhere else. You can accelerate all the way back forward again. When we talk about Mitchell, it's such a challenge because I'm talking about we're on the state clock. We went from priority improvement to turnaround. We thought we might come off the clock because we had growth, but our kids were so far behind that the growth doesn't translate. And it's just we keep talking about failure at Mitchell. I promise you, Mitchell has flowers growing all over. Our SPED department at Mitchell leads most of what we do in secondary. Our theater department is doing incredible performances, and any kid that can manage to put themselves on stage in front of their peer group is already demonstrating agency. Our junior ROTC is award-winning. Our sports department and our athletic department is growing. Our kids, we're seeing really strong growth in ELA and in some of our math cohort. We have the momentum. What we can't do is not be aggressive to ensure that we deliver, because the community has told us, you're at 748 or something was the last number, that they don't believe. The most number of choice outs for a high school zone is Mitchell. We have to show people that we can deliver, that we can put our money where our mouth is and make the academic experience at Mitchell worth every family's time, because it takes almost a generation to overcome a reconstitution or a closure. We're still feeling that families don't believe that that's where they should go. We believe that this pitch to the state, with the intentionality, really with the strong partnership of Andy Swanson and all of CDE, to tell us these are the things that they have seen work in other secondary environments, and this is really the trend right now. External academic partnership, because we don't have enough staff anywhere to handle the immense amount of needs in a turnaround school. So how do we use our dollars wisely? And before the question comes up, we've made an application for our Easy Grant dollars to cover this, and we have every indication that that'll be supported. Is there another slide? Are we closing out?
We are closing out. As we close out, it's always smart to refocus us back on a particular student. And so Michelle is our example here. She is using the D11 Promise Scholarship to begin her nursing degree. Some of you got to meet her at the courtyard ribbon cutting, but wanted to share with you a specific example, there are many more, of a student who is a success story because of these pieces that we are putting into place. We'll do just a quick review of Mitchell's 5E data, which of course we use when we are planning for their pathway plan, their USIP, all of those sorts of pieces. Mitchell has put into place accept core values. It is their PBIS acronym. And I can tell you, because I'm at Mitchell a lot, this is in every classroom. It is referred to frequently. Students know what these core values are, and they are recognized and awarded when they demonstrate these core values. And so we do have a few next steps. I do want to point out that the middle bullet point is actually already well underway. George and I have both debriefed, the full SCNA with our instructional empowerment partners, have begun some early planning from that, and I think we'll actually have some early wins to share from that even by the end of this school year, just in the next few weeks. And so, with that, I think we'll turn it to questions.
I just, George, if you could just kind of summarize the number of reviews you've seen, and we kind of had a moment at the SAC where you kind of shared your commitment to this. I'd love for you to kind of summarize that for the board, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, the SCNA that Sherry talked about being debriefed on, it just solidified the state review panel from 21, last year in 24, and then the SCNA confirmed those two, and the state review panel are contracted through CDE, and it was in 21, innovation. And last spring, it was continue innovation with a clause, if we need another boost or little shot there, let's get some outside partnership. We're doing that. The SCNA just reinforces the momentum that Superintendent Gall is speaking of, and will give the value in the classroom to the teachers as well as the students, because that is the lagging indicator. And so I'm very excited, the more I sit with representatives from instructional empowerment, that it will truly be a partnership, and that the rigor component will be the precipice for the snowball effect, if you will.
Questions,
Okay.
comments, concerns from the
Thank you.
board?
I do see some of the board members have questions, so I'll open it up for questions or concerns from the board. It is my understanding that this does not require board action at this time, no specific action from the board. This is an informational item that is being presented to the board at this time before Superintendent Gall and some of our administrative team goes in front of the state board. State board will provide feedback, and they will formally approve this plan at that time. Okay, Director Bankers.
I was hoping that you would be able to help me with the process that was involved when you say you're teaching at the level at which they're expected to perform when we're gathering data. There used to be a perception in teaching where you get them where they're at and then bring them up. And so now we're talking about, this is the level at which we expect you to learn, to demonstrate what it is that you've learned. And sometimes when that gap is too wide, it's frustrating for kids. So how have you navigated that?
What we've been diving into even before the proposed partnership is Tier 1 instruction acceleration versus Tier 2 intervention or Tier 3 intervention remediation. And so the students at Mitchell are getting a bit of both of that already, and we're going to continue to learn how we can exercise both of those strategies and those practices to the full extent. I will also say, in terms of strategy around that, with the site-based budgeting, we are continuing to examine unique positions that are afforded by the innovation plan that help with acceleration as well as intervention. if that
Thank
helps
you.
out. Yeah.
Director Havely.
Could you go back to the slide, the bar graph slide? I just want to make sure that I fully understood what you were saying about the behavior bar graph.
Okay.
That,
Oh, sorry.
One more.
one more.
One more?
Yep.
There we
That
go.
one, okay. So are you saying that your numbers here reflect the numbers of kids and not the number of incidents? So if kid A is in the office for multiple behavior issues, they are counted once on here, or is each incident counted? Where am I getting it wrong?
Sure. So this one, given that it's number of distinct students, this particular data set is specific to number of students. So
So the student might have multiple times that
Yes.
they've been sent there. I think the real purpose, and if we need to clarify what those incidents are, we can send that to the board as a follow-on. But particularly for Mitchell, it's a trend graph, which as you can see from 21 and 22, we're always in the 30s and 40s of kids, and now we're down almost in the single digits.
Totally,
in
I'm just
January.
want to make sure I read this right. So in January, the orange bar that says 7, that's 7 different kids.
Correct.
But those 7 different kids could have committed, okay.
That's correct. as
All right,
well.
I just want to make sure I heard that right. That's all. Thank you.
Dr. Roth.
Thank you. On that same slide then, that adds up to 55. So is it like the 7 kids that are listed in January might have been also listed in October and August, or is it 55 different students?
That is a great question that we will have to get you an answer on.
Okay, yeah, because like Director Hafley, this slide just is a little confusing. And it would be helpful to know indeed what, how many incidents these children have, or crimes they've committed, although they're not crimes, that's too strong a word. Similarly, and I don't want to make this all about behavior issues, but I do have concerns that the cell phone issues and the tardies are certainly at every school. They didn't exist for cell phone issues necessarily a year ago. So I'm hopeful you are finding ways to address those. And in general, since the numbers are up, and out-of-school suspensions in particular, like how are you supporting those students to get them back in school and engaged?
So again, the removal from instruction actions is also what I was told from our support at CDE, Dr. Swanson, was that graph at the top, removal from instruction, is really what he's interested in as well. So to your point about out-of-school suspensions, I do want to point out that even though there has been an increase in 25, it's well below the 22 and 23 marks. We also have 0 expulsions this year and don't anticipate any expulsions, so fingers crossed. But in terms of support, students are supported through a progressive model of the cell phone referrals, right? It's not like you're in the class with the cell phone and then you get suspended right away. And so it's progressive. We work with the parent, we work with the student, and we do our very best to keep them in the instructional environment. So that's what I can speak to in terms of the cell phone. It's not like a one and done in terms of that. The out-of-school suspensions, I think it would be advantageous to come back to the board with exactly out of the 188 suspensions there, what are the what's the cause of those out-of-school suspensions? I don't have that data in front of me right now. I think that would be interesting because right now we could hypothesize that it's cell phones or it's tardies or it's what, but I think we need to get deeper into that data. What I will also say in terms of doing administration for over 20 years at this point, in-school suspension is a intervention in and of itself. Although they are out of the instructional environment, they are not off campus. And in our in-school detention room, we actually continue to have our monitor engage students in the academic process at the level that they can engage in at that point. Reviewing bag data, behavior, attendance, and grade data, which we have site level bag reports individualized per student. We also ensure that our ISD monitor communicates directly to teachers to get classwork down into that environment so they can stay engaged at least in terms of work completion, and then also engaging in character development lessons as well. So that's some of what happens in the in-school detention situation, which is better than the out-of-school suspension. But in terms of what is causing those out-of-school suspensions, I think we can definitely get deeper into
We'll
that
send
data.
that, but I'll reiterate, there's only 2 high schools without an expulsion this year. One is Mitchell and the other is Odyssey. So I appreciate the work that George and his team have done over time. If you think about predetermined or presupposed relationships between socioeconomical and either criminal or expulsive behavior, it is remarkable to be able to report 0 expulsions from Mitchell this year. So I appreciate that work and that intentionality. And again, we can have another work session conversation on behaviors overall as the district, but the trend of both those slides shows that Mitchell has created a culture where, as supported by the school comprehensive needs assessment, our children are dying to be taught rigorous lessons. And we have not been able to raise the bar by ourselves yet, and we think in this partnership it'll help us get there.
So along those lines, will instructional empowerment be supporting you with behavior issues? I mean, I realize, they're gonna help with culture and engagement, but specifically, do they have anyone who can target that?
So I want to start by saying that the coach team that we bring in for instructional empowerment will be a high school specific team, so they will understand how discipline and behaviors work at a high school level. But while they don't focus specifically on behavior, they do focus significantly on conditions for learning. I think that you saw that in one of those slides with a bar graph on them. And so IE's approach is going to be one of working with the Mitchell leadership team to ensure that systems are set up that in such a way that supports student behavior that contributes to learning. And of course, the behaviors that contribute to learning are not the things that students get referred to the office or suspended for. And so it's not an individual coaching piece for that, but it is very much so at the systems level. George, is there anything from the SCNA that you want to add?
I appreciate your comments. The only thing I would add is in debriefing the SCNA with the representative is that our discipline assistant principal is being considered for direct coaching as well.
And can you all comment on the students that were included in the SCNA? Because before it comes up as a question.
Sure. The students that were included for panel discussions in the SCNA.
Multiple panels were asked questions over the course of the 2 days, and there was a student panel where student input, student feedback was provided directly to the SCNA representatives who conducted the assessment.
Okay, one more question, and that was, so you've met to do the SCNA debrief, essentially. Sherry, you mentioned that ideas might be taking, or that change might be happening this semester, even this spring yet. So is that because you've already started working with them on the coaching? I guess, have they started officially already with the coaching and the program, or is that more targeted for next fall?
They have not started. We, need the funding approved through the EASY grant to extend that relationship with instructional empowerment. I think the changes that we are seeing are the fact that we have many partnerships in our schools, so many of our school leaders, particularly at the area superintendent level and our academics team, are picking up on our commitment to best first instruction. So we are getting traction. I just can no longer wait for an innovation plan alone. Again, I still think it takes almost a generation to recover from a school closure or a school reconstitution, and I think that we are right about there right now. I have given George my very public support and confidence to be the leader that brings us through to this next phase, and we appreciate the work that he has done, sometimes in isolation to get us to this point, but I feel that the partnership is stronger now than ever internally to the system, and that instructional empowerment will give us the skill set of a place that we're still growing as an organization. That's their bread and butter, which is rigor and the quality of instruction, and we're gonna bring that to bear at Mitchell and hopefully see that to be the fruits in the same way that the Promise and some of our staffing initiatives have been able to flow to other schools.
Thank you.
Director Gary.
I have a few quick data questions. Can you refresh my memory what the enrollment trend is for Mitchell?
Enrollment trend is down, but we're stable right around the 750 mark right now.
Talk about the incoming freshman classes. Seem like they always seem to be about 200 to 250. And
Yeah, I mean, the largest class over the last 4 years since I've been principal has been the freshman class, incoming right around 220, somewhere between 220, 250. And then we see dip as the progression into 10th, 11th, and 12th grades happen, which is no surprise for a lot of reasons. You have natural attrition that happens in education, and then also I think as some students who are more serious about academics maybe have the perception that the rigor and the agency for them is not there, they find different options. But hopefully that answers your question.
Great. A few more. I think this one is slide 14. Yeah, I know off to the side it says there's inconsistency, and if I was more on the ball, I would have just done this over an email. But like, if you take a look at the bottom chart here, what is the percentile telling me? Because I noticed, for instance, you know, I've seen enough of these to know that you got to compare like winter to winter and spring to spring, because within a year there are changes. So if I compare like winter 23, I see a percentile of 25, but a score of 1,053. And then if I look over at winter 24, the score has gone down 1 point, but the percentage has jumped up almost 10 points. What is going on in this data set?
I know we have Dr. Colicky in the room. Dr. Colicky, you want to take this? Medium is the middle, right? So.
Oops, I'm sorry.
So like winter 23 to winter 24, just help me visualize this.
Yeah.
Percentile, median percentile jumps up 10%, score doesn't change.
Maybe the math one in particular.
He's looking at the math one.
Bottom one.
Yep.
Yeah, the bottom one. Winter 23 to winter 24.
Instead of just speaking right off the top of my head, I'll run that down for you to make sure we're talking either median percentile or median growth percentile, because those two can get exchanged, but I'll have an answer for you in a second.
That's fine. Like I said, if I had any brains at all, that would have been an email rather than a question at the dais. So that's okay. Can you go to slide 18? This is something Director Ott mentioned as well. I just want to check that you're thinking about this in your data. You have over on one side a bar graph of incidents per year, 2022, 2023, et cetera. And then over on the other side, you talk about top 5 incidents, and one of them is cell phone violations. Presumably, pre our ABC policy, cell phone violations were not in your data because they weren't a thing that you were tracking. So is it, did anyone make any kind of adjustment for that in the data? Because if I'm looking at 2025 and I say, oh, 10,000 incidents, is 3,000 of that cell phones? And as a result, that number actually should be significantly lower because there's a new type of violation that you are tracking now that you were not tracking in the past?
We have not made that type of adjustment, and we can update the slide specifically on cell phones and how they've impacted behavior, reportable incidents over time.
That's fine. I just like if you're tracking behavior data, just that's something you should be thinking about. That if you introduce a new category for violations that wasn't there in previous years, that's got to be accounted for. Can you go to slide 26? Hold on. Which one? No, it was like the bathtub graph that.
Okay.
Yeah, this one. This is an IE slide, so maybe they did this and we don't know everything. What does verify learning to take action within a lesson mean?
You want it?
I'll give it my best crack. What you'll find in the SENA is much of the language that we have already had in place since 2021 that I brought to Mitchell and my team has implemented and the teachers have implemented is very similar language to what you'll find in the SENA report, which I'm very happy about. And that's one of the reasons why I'm getting more and more excited, because this is not reinventing the wheel, it's doing the wheel better, if you will. But verify learning is formative assessments and making sure that in the classroom that when there's a learning target and a success criteria that standards align, the teachers are verifying that learning through a formative assessment in real time. Are the students engaged in a rigorous task, and are they truly learning what the standard has outlined in it? And the teacher has the obligation to verify that.
I'm going to add on just a quick piece. And if the teacher is identifying through their quick assessments during the lesson, and this is especially important at a high school on a block schedule, if the teacher finds that students are getting stuck, not meeting that learning target, not progressing, they are stopping the lesson or stopping that group of students to intervene, to reteach, to find a different strategy in the moment and not waiting until the next day or the next lesson.
Okay, thanks. Sorry for all the nitpicky data questions. I do have kind of just a broad question, though, that I want to step back and ask, which is, what do you see as the biggest academic barrier for Mitchell to overcome? Is it students come in from middle school grade levels behind and it's hard to catch them up while also giving them good tier 1 instruction at the same time? Is it like a socioeconomic thing? Is it English as a second language barriers? Is it behavioral issues? Like what, if you had to just say, what's the number one barrier that you're seeing to academic growth?
Yes. Okay. No, I would say honestly, it is the learning gap that they enter into high school with. It's a systemic, I mean, Superintendent Gall speaks to it all the time. It's a systemic issue that multiple systems face throughout America in terms of public education. But our students are coming in with a tremendous learning gap. However, the alignment with partnerships and system coherence hopefully is a solve for that. And if I can add a second, I do think it's the professional development, the talent development of our instructional staff. The 82, I think the number that HR was able to provide an update on the earlier slide about staff fill rate of 82, 30% was documented in the SCNA as alternative licensure. Teachers are not entering into education with the same type of training that traditional teachers, even I graduated in 2002 from my bachelor's program. We're not seeing that same level of development getting into the workforce. The professional development has to look a bit more creative and aligned and coherent at this point.
Thank you.
Dr. Nelson.
When you were speaking about professional development just now, it made me wonder with your, what are we calling it, the staffing grant where you get extra PD days and that sort of thing. Have you found that beneficial? And like the number of days that you're given, is it too much? Is it not enough? Just right?
It's
Anything
never enough. This is our first year. Can you go to the IE coaching slide? I think what's going to be really beneficial for next year is now having an actual plan for teacher development to be able to bring in. We have done excellent work as a staff in really creating professional development out of, I would say, the thin air over the last couple of years. And we have kind of landed on a half district, half school-based model for this next year through the calendar committee. But I think these additional days with the rigor that instructional empowerment will bring to bear will be a game changer. If I could play back to last year, your now graduated assistant principal, Ray Cockrell, would lead very robust professional development, but it was an inch deep and a mile wide. She'd have the entire staff in the media center as one of the strongest instructional leaders in the building. That's not going to get to the rigor. Remember, most secondary systems are built on content expertise, and I would never expect a single leader to be able to say, by the way, what works in chemistry works in social studies.
Right.
Now, there are instructional strategies that might be transferable, but I think it's going to be the depth of the added time that we do have with the rigor of what we're able to get in this partnership that I believe we'll be able to then back build and consider what is the D11 way. Right now, the D11 way is status quo, and we don't want to change, and we've lost kids, and it's not our fault. The D11 way needs to be, how do we ensure every child is getting access to the highest quality instruction? And if you get 100 for your kid this year, how do you get them 101 the next year? So every one of us constantly investing in improving the quality of what we do every day. That's how you overcome, and I appreciate George actually standing up and saying, yes, those underlying conditions for some children, well, not just in District 11, but in America right now, are sometimes too great to overcome until you get to a very focused, coherent, and aligned strategy that says, we refuse to accept that. I refuse to accept that children who choose Mitchell or don't choose a different high school are destined to not meet and exceed state expectations.
So to your point of the difference at secondary level needing to have content area expertise, is instructional empowerment, I know we've had them around a while, I know they helped elevate Audubon, for example.
Yeah, I can share with you a case study for the work they did in another system on a high school if you're interested.
So is their strategy more what you were talking about, instructional strategies and not so much content area expertise? Is that kind of a fair way to think about how at a high school level this is going to look?
Yeah, I think it's still a yes and. I don't think they're gonna come in here and tell our math department more about math than the math department, but I do think that at the secondary level, there has to be a commitment to the standard being owned by the department, and then how it is that that transfers, that the experience for the child is similar from department to department. We're happy to bring that model or open some of our schools up for board members to visit to see what those relationships have looked like.
Yeah, I would be interested in kind of getting a better understanding of what this looks like in our schools. I'm curious, when we were talking about the enrollment, does Mitchell have a comparable dropout rate to our other secondary schools, or do we see higher dropout rates?
I can't speak to the comparison. What I do know is that our dropout rate has decreased to 2.9 as reported by, I'll have to get you the name of the company that posts that, but we've decreased it to 2.9, which is a celebration.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess, I don't know if this is something we monitor, but as we're talking about students coming in behind, do we test and find out, like, what is the average grade level that our ninth graders are coming in at? Like, are they generally more at a sixth grade level, or?
So next week we have middle school standards as an update to the board. That's included in there. I will say that there is a very weak correlation right now between grades given and either our interim or our summative assessments in CMAS, STAR and CMAS. We actually have some schools where we have a negative correlation that says we give A's and B's, which A's, B's, and C's, and kids are losing learning as measured by the state. I think that's a very large question for the board to consider, and we're going to present it to you at the middle school level for you to understand the size of the problem. We have some incremental ideas that we will present to the board on it, but one of the feedback mechanisms we get is parents don't feel the sense of urgency because parents follow their child's grade that they get from a teacher, and for many reasons, the culture has been to discredit what are assessment strategies, either by school district as an interim assessment or state level. There's a common belief that we over-test children. But the disparity that you will see on some of those slides of how far our children are from what the state deems as grade level and the GPA of which they get will cause you great concern. Whoa. So it will answer rhetorically that I would say the average is sixth grade.
I could tell you. Yeah. It's fifth and sixth grade as reported by STAR on our incoming ninth graders.
Okay. That really helps to understand what the scope is, like the challenge before you. And I mean, Superintendent, you and I have talked about the passive nature of parents. It used to be paper report cards were sent home and they had at least a better understanding of where their child was at. I hear what you're saying, that even that maybe isn't quite a very good correlation to the CMAS, but still, even CMAS score-wise or STAR data-wise, are we proactively giving that information to families and helping them to understand where their child really is at?
We do. I think the challenge is, even to Dr. Carey's point, the numbers as presented aren't logical. They don't really share. We had one of our middle school leaders sharing as a CMAS pep talk with their students. The principal at North briefed every student on, hey, here's what our numbers are and these what they mean. And rightfully so, the kids at North were super excited that they were the second highest performing middle school in all of our portfolio, and that their ELA had moved from the 40s to the 50s, but they were missing the context that a 51 meant that only half the kids that got that briefing were on grade level according to the state. And so I love the momentum of North was coming right after, I think it was Holmes was the highest performing, and Jenkins was close on ELA or math, but that they were missing the narrative that said, and as reported, only half of the student body at North is performing at grade level, which is not the way we talk about North, and it's not how our parents that choose North feel that only half of the kids there are going to be at grade level. So I do think the board is going to have to grapple with how quickly or how aggressively do we want to communicate this sense of urgency. The reason the district has moved, I don't want to go all the way back, but those slides that we show in the beginning, is we just won't let go of the urgency that exists. But we still have a pretty large disconnect with our community. And what does it mean to have somebody enter high school at a 5th or a 6th grade reading level? And again, when we're saying we don't have rigor, that doesn't mean that the teachers at Mitchell aren't wonderful professionals who are pouring in every ounce of what they have. But you can't get a kid that's 3 years behind caught up at 83% when you have the weakest PD and the most inconsistent staffing and a constant rotation of either the highest number of alternative licensure or the most number of non-probation or probationary teachers that are non-renewed because it's just not a good fit. So we have to get super aggressive in thinking about, one, I'm not going to call David back up again, but our DPF, our district performance framework, has had such a large increase because we're doing much, much better at elementary school. It's a much smaller course correction to make it there. Now, the good news there is we'll start to reap those benefits in the out years, but ask any middle school or or high school leader, it's a long time to wait for that 4th grader to get to you. That's 5 years for George.
We only get 2.
We're going to get more.
Just thank you for giving the context at the beginning of this presentation. That was really helpful to just kind of lay out what the options are and giving us that history as well. Thank you for the presentation and for the work that you guys are doing. It's such a challenge, but it's so very important and meaningful, and just know that you're very appreciated.
Okay, I don't see any more questions from the board. I do have a couple of questions and kind of like an overall thought elevating this to a 30,000 feet level. I know, Superintendent Gall, that you are presenting this to CDE, the state board, on May 14th, I think. What is the timeline after that presentation? I think, if I remember right, Mitchell is in the 6th year right now on the state watch list. So after this presentation, and if the state board approves this plan, what are the timeline that we are looking at before we need to go back to the state board?
So the state board will hear this briefing on May 14th, and they vote the next day. They usually give us an indication of the way that they're going to vote, but by the end of the day on the 15th, we'll know their vote. They then order the state attorney general to authorize a state order to us, which we receive pretty quickly within a few weeks after that. And that gives us 2 more years of implementation time. So we will have the 25-26 school year and the 26-27 school year to move Mitchell fully off the clock. If we do not have to go back for another state board hearing, but if we don't, this very same process happens again, state review panel, commissioner visit. That is not where we're going to be.
And that time, the options are very limited if we have to go back in front of that, because we've exhausted. When we looked at that options list, we are checking boxes after boxes. And this is my overall take on this. I do appreciate, George, your leadership, Principal Smith, your leadership out here. It is not easy to step into a situation where that school was completely disbanded. When I say that, I mean like the whole staff was let go, and then you had to reassemble that staff and then build that culture in that community. It is a step-by-step process, and it's not like we can expect results overnight. Some of the results that we see that are even presented out here to what Superintendent Gall was talking about, achievement and the growth that we see in the STAR testing doesn't translate into the PSAT and SAT scores. Over the last 3 years, it seems like it's trending down in that PSAT and SAT scores compared to what we see with the. And my overall take is this is my 6th year on the board, and I think all 6 years I've seen Mitchell as a priority improvement or turnaround school, and you were in priority improvement or turnaround school even before I got on the board, and you got a pause in it for a couple of years because of a pandemic. And we've been implementing strategies with innovation plan. I was there for the State Board of Education meeting 2 years back when we presented that innovation plan at that time, and there was optimism in the air that that was going to be the cure to what is ailing Mitchell, and we are going to be able to pull Mitchell out of the state watch list. And it has, in a way, helped out. The innovation that brought in some of the waivers has helped your school in terms of staffing and stuff. And this is the next step in the process. After this, the choices are limited. So we just need to intentionally get into this and roll up our sleeves and make sure that 2 years from now, we are not talking, I may not be on the board at that time, but it'll be the problem with another board. But we do certainly want to make sure that we are providing, as you see from the board side, we have supported Mitchell as best as possible with the resources that you need, with the staffing that you need, with the additional funding that you need, and make sure that the opportunities are there. Any new innovation that comes forth, like the Mitchell Promise, starts with Mitchell before it gets expanded to any one of the other high schools. So all the opportunities are there for the kids. It's at some point in time has to translate into tangible student outcomes.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. Anything
Thank you.
else from you, Superintendent?
Couldn't be prouder of the team. Certainly want to acknowledge and thank Galileo for kind of plowing the field for us there. We're excited for the opportunity to engage. The state board is certainly hyper-focused on secondary challenges. We are not alone in this regard. There are, I think, a dozen high schools that they're monitoring at this time, and our conversations with CDE are, many are considering this type of an option, but this is not a problem that is germane to District 11. This is the problem that is germane to America, which is if we really want to define equity, how do we get every teacher of the year the opportunity to go teach in the hardest school in a place where they think that that's an opportunity and not a risk? That's how you actually overcome this.
Thank you. Appreciate again, and best wishes to you when you go in front of the state board to Superintendent Gall as well, and give us a feedback after that state board. I'm sure Superintendent Gall will keep us appraised of it. And if you need any future help, support, please keep us informed through Superintendent Gall as to what you need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Yeah. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, it is legislative reports, and I see our legislative lobbyist, Ms. Amy Atwood, joining us from the state legislature. So I'm going to turn it over to her to give us an update on what is transpiring at the state level in the past couple of weeks, give us an update, and then I'll open it up for the board for questions. Thank you, Ms. Atwood, for joining us.
Great, good evening. We are 3 weeks from today, from the end of session. It ends May 7th. So we are getting down to the last 21 days of session out of a 120-day session. The budget has passed the House and Senate. It's now in conference committee, and that's the joint budget committee goes through and looks at all the amendments that were added, likely strips all of those amendments, the House and Senate amendments, and they tidy it up, and then it will go back for final passage in the House and Senate. We expect that for it to be totally done and on its way to the governor at the latest by next Wednesday. So that's good news that we're finally there. We're about 2 weeks behind where we usually would be. The second what I want to update on is School Finance Act. So the School Finance Act was heard last week in House Education Committee. Mike did a great job testifying. He was on the very first panel of support testimony and had different testimony than anyone else gave all day. And so it was really good and highlighted D11 and all of the things that D11 is doing to be financially sound. So that is continuing to move through the process. It was on second reading in the House today. So that means it'll finish in the House this week. It'll be in the Senate next week. So it likely, at the latest, it'll be finished April 30th. So I would say we have about 2 more weeks with School Finance Act moving through the process. We don't foresee any changes to of substance to the numbers. It's still a 4-year averaging with the 15% implementation of the new formula. We don't expect that to change at all. A third bill that I'd like to highlight is the accountability bill. If you remember, we have been following the Accountability Task Force for 2 years, and they have their bill. It's moving through the process, although I have to say it has stalled a little bit. It has a large fiscal note attached to it, so amendments will need to be made to decrease CDE's, the work CD has to do to implement it. But again, that bill, it really has a high likelihood of passing. Just maybe a slimmed down version of it. So those are really the 3 big ones that are moving through the process right now. And as we come down to the end, bills are starting to die off. Are there any questions?
Are there any other education bills that the board should be aware of at this time?
No, not right now. We haven't had any new bills in education introduced.
Okay, I'll open it up for the board for questions. Board. Director Jurgensen.
You know, I got to chat with you. One I saw today that actually the Chamber of Commerce sent out an email was House Bill 25-1297. It's the one that shifts, it causes an increase in healthcare plans of 1% to help offset the cost of state subsidy plans. So in other words, we're shifting money from those who don't participate in a system to pay for those who participate in a system. And being that we just went through our Kaiser update and the board took more of the budget on to keep costs as low as we could, excuse me, for our staff, I'm worried about this bill causing further increases to not only our district healthcare plan, but companies around the state that are helping to cover state budgets. Can you speak to that at all?
This is not a bill that I have been tracking.
Okay, I got it from the Chamber of Commerce, so I know it's probably new to you.
Yeah, and there aren't any school districts that have weighed in with a position on the bill.
Okay.
So
maybe could you do some research?
I can get more information.
If we'd be on the hook for that 1% increase in our costs, that would be something that I think we would want to know before we took a position at all officially. Great, thank you. Can you tell me about Senate Bill 25-284? This is the Youth Services Organization's engagement on student school campuses.
Yes, let me just pull it up.
It was introduced on April 7th, I believe.
So what it does is on or before January 1st, the bill requires each charter school and district charter school and district to adopt and implement a policy that authorizes a youth service organization to present to students on school campus during the school day about opportunities available for extracurricular activities. So this is like the Boy Scouts could come in and have time during the day. There is the sponsorship, wait, let me go back. There is legal question whether or not the district just needs to have a policy about extracurricular groups coming in. or if it actually is saying that you have to let extracurricular groups in during the school day.
Yeah, I
So
think that's my concern.
Mhm. And that is still up for debate right now, is what is the bill actually saying? When we look at the sponsorship of the bill, it's Senator Exum, but Senator Lundeen is also heavily involved in this bill and has said that he will personally work on it to make sure that it's not a mandate that we have to allow outside organizations in during the school day, to take time away from classroom time.
Yeah.
So he is as well, he's the one that has asked legislative council staff for basically a ruling. What does this actually say?
That would be really good to get clarity on, because as you know, teachers are already strapped for time, instructional time, they're overburdened with other stuff, and then to go, hey, you've got Boy Scouts coming in at 1 p.m. today, because we have to, I would like that to be clear. So if you keep us up to date on that, I would appreciate it.
I will.
And then my final one is an update on 1312. That one passed the House, but I don't know if it's been delayed in the Senate side or if it's, what, can you give us an update on that?
Okay, so 1312 is legal protections for transgender individuals. It has passed the House third reading. It passed last week, beginning of last week, on April 6th, and it's on its way to the Senate, and it hasn't been introduced in the Senate yet.
Is there a certain time that it has to be introduced there before it before it dies, or? Okay.
No, there are deadlines, but they get waived.
Okay.
That's how they can introduce a bill in the last 3 days of session, is because they waived that deadlines.
Okay. So that being said, that it still has a chance to be read and passed, I have significant concerns with it, with the implications it's going to have on schools, fellow classmates with the new definitions, counselors being mandatory reporters and having to be caught in the crosshairs of discourse of control, legal custody battles. It's just ridden with all sorts of concerns. I would like to see our board take a stance against it, and I don't know what that would look like. Could you inform us on that?
Yeah, I'm looking to see if any other school districts have taken any kind of position on the bill. Okay, no other school districts or case has taken a position on the bill. I think that we need to have legal look at this and tell us exactly what are the impacts to the district. And then at that point, make an informed decision on a board position.
Okay, yeah, my main piece is the challenge to parental rights, and then again, our counselors as mandatory reporters being caught in all sorts of legal concerns as I read the bill.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll leave the next steps to President Melpacum on what he wants to do.
Okay, what are you hearing about this bill, Ms. Atwood, in your circles out there? Does this bill have legs? Sometimes you are able to prognosticate or speculate where a bill may end up, if it's going to potentially fall off, or does this have potential to end up on the governor's desk?
I think it does have the potential to end up on the governor's desk. We have a very progressive legislature, and with what is happening at the federal level around discrimination, this is a pushback to that, and being a progressive state pushing back against the administration, I think it has a high likelihood of passing. It would be, I would enjoy the opportunity to hear what the direct implications are for the district.
Okay, so if and I'll come to you, Director Hafley, just to finish this conversation. As far as impact to the district, what you are suggesting is have legal counsel take a look at this bill and provide some feedback?
Yes, please.
Okay. So is the board open to that as far as me asking Deb Benkins, our legal counsel, to take a look at this and provide a legal interpretation and impact to the school district going forth by show of thumbs? Okay, great. Yeah, it has to be quick. Yeah. 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 Do you, when does the session end?
It's 3 weeks.
In 3 weeks' time.
And it hasn't been, it may be heard next week in the Senate, but it could be another week out. This is the kind of bill that will hang out there until the very end of session.
Okay, so I am going to reach out to legal counsel based on the feedback I received from the board and see if I can get some type of legal interpretation. Also talk to Superintendent Gall and his team as to what the impact will be on the school district, if there is any, and then get that information to you, if possible, by end of this week or early next week. Okay, and then if necessary, you can circle back with the board next Wednesday to take any specific directive from the board in this regard.
Yes, and next Wednesday it's plenty of time.
Okay, Director Hafley.
Hi, Amy. I just had a quick question. If the end of the session's in 3 weeks, and let's say the 1312 does not get called up onto the Senate floor by the end of that 3 weeks, what happens then? Is it still alive? Can it come back in the fall?
Okay, so that is a really good question. So here in Colorado, if a bill is not totally passed and sent to the governor by midnight on the 120th day, so by midnight on May 7th, the bill is dead. Now, it could come back next session, but it is a whole new bill. So it could be exactly the same language, but it is a new bill. We don't have the carryover from one session to the next like other states do.
So they would have to start it all over again, go through the House of Representatives, and then on to the Senate.
Or the other way around.
Yeah, okay, thanks, appreciate that.
Director Nelson.
Hi, Amy. Can you give us a little guidance just for community members on what part they could play in if they have strong feelings regarding this bill? And just for the public, I don't know that we've put much definition to it here tonight. And this bill would change. It would state that a child that is pursuing gender identity, if the parents do not agree with those beliefs, then it would be considered child abuse. And so that's why we're speaking about the implications that it could have, for instance, on our counselors as mandatory reporters, that now this would be considered abuse if a family has differing beliefs than what this bill is proposing. And so just could you give us a little insight on, as a school board, we'll have to consider if we're going to take a stand or not, but for our community, what can community members do to help have this go the direction they would like?
Sure. So when it comes to advocacy for any piece of legislation, as a community member, starting with your local legislator, so your local state representative and your local senator, the one that you have voted for, that, or maybe not voted for, but you live in their district, you start with them, a phone call and an email. And then from there, then you broaden it out to what is the next circle and the next circle and the next circle, and making the connection in those phone calls and in those emails that you live in the area, this is very important to you, and having very succinct bullet points in the email You can also come up to the legislature and typically be here by 9 o'clock. And you can work different legislators in the lobby, and you send notes in and say, Representative Puglisi, I would like to speak to you about 1312. And then you wait in the lobby for that person to come, that representative to come out, and then you lobby her and you speak to her. You advocate, not so much lobby, but you advocate your position on the bill. So it's all about as personal touch you can make. A phone call, leave a message, an email, a succinct email, and then if you can, come up and do a day of advocacy where you have a targeted list of people that you want to get to.
Is there a way?
And emails do work.
Is there a way to understand sort of where the legislators are at, like the ones that they're more in the middle, they're still deciding, and they need help and guidance from their community members, rather than the ones that they're pretty set in the direction they would like to go?
It's an interesting question. That's what a lobbyist does. Is can say, you don't need to worry about these people. These are the people in the middle.
Right.
And, on a bill like this, it is very partisan.
Mm-hmm.
So I think every senator, almost every House member signed on to the bill.
Wow.
So it's a very partisan issue. And like I said, it's not just so much partisan because of the issue that the bill is taking up. It is also partisan because it's pushing back on the Trump administration. So there's more politics to it.
Sure. Yeah. It's quite a challenge when we live in a free country and yet a certain set of beliefs are being imposed on all. And so what can we do about that? So I appreciate you giving us a little bit of guidance on advocacy. Thank you.
And on this particular bill, there's no need to lobby state representatives or House members because it's already passed the House. The only ones to make a decision now are the senators and the governor.
Okay, any other questions from the board to Ms. Atwood at this time? I don't see anything. Director Art, okay, you have a couple of questions. Director Art.
Are we 8 minutes late for our public hearing?
And I was going to come to that. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Atwood. I appreciate your update to the board, and I'll keep in touch with you. And next week we may require, or I'll talk to you and see if you are needed to come back to the board meeting next Wednesday. Okay, thank you. Going back to what Director Art brought up, and I did forget to mention at 5:30, even though Ms. Olson gave me a sticky note reminding me of it. At 5:30, we had a public hearing for, it's scheduled exactly at 5:30 for public hearing on Colorado Military Academy. But we do not have anyone signed up for that public hearing. If there is anybody that do want to talk about the Colorado Military Academy Charter School transfer application, is there anybody in the audience that, even though you didn't sign up, you want to come and address that charter school application at this time? Okay, I don't see anybody in the audience, so that is interested in addressing the board on that charter school application. So moving on to the next item on the agenda. It is an action item. And it is a contract award for purchase of intercom system for middle and elementary schools. Director Nelson, can you please make the motion for action item C1?
I move that the Board of Education approves the one-time purchase of $2,350 and 2,350 intercom systems totaling $1,809,500 with a delivery date of no later than June 30th, 2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Superintendent Gall, this is new information.
We have the team here to give you the information.
Okay.
Chief Odom.
Thank you, Superintendent Gall. Good evening, Board of Education. I'm going to make this real quick. With me tonight is the team, Tom Hunt from IT and Rosa from Procurement. This purchase, this one-time purchase, will upgrade district-wide all elementary and middle school intercom systems. It is funded with MLO dollars. Some of the desired outcomes will be to modernize intercom systems, creating a secure environment for students, staff, and visitors. It will integrate the system with existing safety protocols and emergency response plan. It will create a more organized and responsive environment that supports the teaching and learning environment, minimizing disruptions. Some return on investment, little highlights. This is operational efficiency and will provide an enhanced collaboration across building sites, and we will reduce the risk in improving crisis management matters. This one-time purchase was against a competitive co-op, meaning we did not have to go out and issue a competitive solicitation. We could award. We awarded it and then brought it to you under exigency circumstances to meet the deadline of June 30th to avoid any additional taxes we might or tariffs we might realize on this item. And then we'll start installing through an outsourced vendor with some IT support throughout this process. We'll start right away and it'll go into next school year. So that's my high-level overview. I'll turn it over if you have any questions. The team is here to answer any questions you might have. And I forgot to acknowledge Kathy New from our IT department is here as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for all being here, Board. Are there any questions on this contract item request for intercom speakers? Director Nelson.
Can you give a little bit more specific detail on how these new intercom systems differ from what we already have in place? I mean, as I'm visiting schools and things, they seem to work fine. So I'm just struggling with how much money this is.
Well, we haven't upgraded any of our systems in the elementary, middle, and the middle schools in a very long time. Some of them have dead spots and they're not completely working throughout the whole system. So that is a security concern. There are some items that we would probably label as relics and that should be in a museum under an archaic technology that we don't really support anymore. The bigger issue is that we can't support these for replacement or repair. They're just out.
Okay. So this is, when you say there's dead spots, you mean like in the schools there are
spots where people can't hear the intercom announcements.
Okay. Okay.
Does that help?
Yes,
Did that answer your question?
That's helpful. I'm
Okay.
just picturing, I know as part of our security, we, buzz in, and that's part of the intercom system as well, is what I was picturing when you said intercom.
Correct. So in classrooms, if someone's in the office and they need to reach a classroom or vice versa, if someone in the classroom needs to send someone up, they can buzz the office, that type of.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You good? You good? Director Jurgensen.
I had to look it up. Is this what it looks like with the LCD screen?
Yes.
Okay. This says 1,500, so we're getting them for $770 a piece, so seems like a decent deal.
That's the competitive nature.
Okay.
The volume also drives the price down.
Yeah, I would assume. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I don't see any other board questions on this. So each one of the system is going to be, every classroom will have one of these speakers installed. Is that the plan?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Phone a friend, yeah.
And are they like in the hallways and stuff as well? Or like
They can be, but
outdoors
I'll
and-
let Mr. Hunt
Yeah,
answer.
our priority is to make sure every classroom has one of these speakers in it. Now, there are some common areas, right? There's hallways, et cetera. I mean, we may put some of those in the hallways, but we also have an infrastructure where essentially we can amplify those signals for the common areas in the hallways, even if we don't have enough speakers to fit all the hallways in the common areas. So we have accommodations both inside and outside, but classrooms will be our main priority.
Okay, so is it safe to say that this addresses a security concern that is in our school at this time, make our classrooms a lot more secure, just in case there is some type of...
It makes our communications
Yes.
more secure.
Yes.
But
Well,
I
but
don't want
if
to
there
fool
is-
anybody that you might just be telling somebody something more accurately. I think it helps us in our processing of the challenges that exist when terrible things happen in schools
Correct.
on our connectivity to ensure that we can be as responsive as quickly and as safely and as possible.
Right,
If we have a stay in place or something like that, you got to be staying in the classroom.
correct.
Then those communication can be more effectively communicated with
Yeah,
the system.
absolutely, yeah. These are addressable by the classroom or groups of classroom. They have a microphone in, so you could actually monitor what's happening in the classroom, right? So they're much more safe and secure overall.
Okay. Seeing no further question, roll call, please.
Director Bankus?
Aye.
Director Carey?
Aye.
Director Hinckley?
Aye.
Director Jorgensen?
Aye.
Director Malpacken?
Aye.
Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Ott?
Aye.
The ayes have it. The action item for the purchase of these intercom systems was approved by the board.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to the non-action item on the agenda. The first item is the Colorado military. Is that the first item on the agenda? Yeah, the first item on the agenda is the Colorado Military Academy review and presentation to the board. This is new information, Superintendent Gall. I'm going to turn it over to you to set up the
Yeah, and before I
conversation.
let Nicole get started, please, if Mr. Z and EJ can come forward too, you get front row seats for this, and if Mr. Kilroy can come forward too for the work that he's done to join Dr. Comfort. We've had a couple of changes over the last year or so where we no longer have a fifth area superintendent. And so Mr. Kilroy has taken over a lot of the portfolio management under the leadership of Dr. Comfort. So they have supported CMA in their transfer application. To refresh the board's memory, we have used a transfer process to enhance our local authorization to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our families from a portfolio choice. This is not the first time some existing board members have seen CMA. We had brought CMA forward in the 22-23 school year for a transfer into 2024. At that time, we had prioritized them third out of our three schools, or two schools that we thought we would bring in, and then one of them fell through, and it was too late for us to change the direction that CMA needed to go at the time. Since then, they have brought in a new school leader, Nicole, and thank you for your service. I know that it is greatly appreciated by the families that you serve there. So, and to the rest of the team, there has been many changes for some of the concerns that we've seen before, but I give the floor to Nicole Roberts to be able to share with you the mission, vision, and the great things about Colorado Military Academy and how they could benefit from local authorization by D11.
Thank you, Superintendent Gall. Thank you, Board of Education, for allowing us to present tonight on behalf of Colorado Military Academy. It's an honor to be here. Our mission is obviously up on the board.
So, Ms. Nicole, before you start, could you introduce yourself, your position
Yes,
with
sir.
the school, and also the people behind you?
Yes,
so
sir.
we have an understanding.
Yes, sir. I'm Nicole Roberts. I'm the Executive Director. To my right is Mr. Joseph Sagaitis. He is my elementary principal, my pre-K through 6th grade. And then Mr. E.J. Van Norman is my 7th through 12th, so my middle school and high school principals. They are joining me. They are great support. So with our mission, it is important to outline You know, we are focused on STEM, but with the military education model, we're not a pipeline for the military. Our goal is to make every graduate qualified for any opportunity that they may come upon. Just like Superintendent Gall said before, it's not just the seniors, it's after, when they leave us. We really emphasize our education on the self-discipline and then exposing them to lots of opportunities. And we do that through our benchmark, which is the Civil Air Patrol. That is a huge part of our program, our high school program. You have to be, you have to join Civil Air Patrol in 9th grade as a freshman, and you go all the way through until you graduate. That model creates lots of advantages. For example, it instills a lot of things that I think may be lost in some of the traditional schools and other schools. You know, you have 11-year-olds that are learning how to lead small elements of people. They're learning how to lead through project-based learning. They're being able to plan training that they feel is important to their classmates and important to them through things that they're exposed through the world. They can public speak very well. They learn a huge oath that they take, and they take very seriously with each rank that they make. They learn how to be a mentor, a follower, and a leader, and they learn about all the importance of all of that through our mission and vision. It's a huge part of our program. There's about 178 different programs just through Civil Air Patrol, and they're all STEM-based. So it's a very important cornerstone for us, and we're really proud to have it in our school. When we began the 23-24 school year, there were a lot of areas that we needed to improve upon. See if I know how to operate this. Oh. Can you? Should I just hit the bottom button? Would that probably be the right thing?
The left and right buttons, but I'm happy to.
Okay. There we go. So, as I was saying, during the 23 and 24 school year, there were many areas that needed attention. As you can see, and I'm happy to talk about this, obviously, is our rating, our priority improvement rating. We worked super hard on our testing. We worked super hard on our participation. We worked incredibly hard on our academic portion, and we fell short. And we fell short mostly due to an administrative error. Being a new administrative team, since the principal did resign 2 weeks before the school started, and we started off with that, it's important to know that there was a lot of things that we didn't actually execute as well as we should have, lacking the continuity. So with our 94% rating, we fell below the 95 requirement. A big error in coding. We did work with lots of safeguards this year. We actually stood up our own program to make sure that we understood the entire testing process, what goes into the testing process, what's important, the education of the parents and the students throughout the testing process, as well as the staff. And even though last year was a rough year, as far as probably not from the outside looking in, from the inside, it was a lot of work for us. But we still went from the 88th to the 94th percentile, which is still, even with all of the challenge, we were really proud about that. So I'd like to drill down, next slide please, drill down on our major improvement strategies. So you always want to look at the data when things aren't going the way they should, when you're not seeing the improvements that you should see. So we are very data-driven individuals and as a team. So our research-based instructional practices, we did individual teacher coaching. We invested in educational coaching contractors. We brought in contractors that have been seasoned principals for 10, 20, 30 years to come in and look at our practices, to come in and observe our teachers, observe our students. So we're not just looking at, well, what are the students not learning? Well, what are our teachers not learning? Where do our teachers need help? Because a big problem before, there was not a lot of investment in our teachers. We had one principal, and I don't like stovepipes, and that one principal was responsible for all of it. So as soon as that new school year started last year, that's why we brought up our associate principals. So number one, those teachers would get the in-person professional feedback, mentoring, coaching, and instruction that they desperately needed and desperately wanted. And that was also twofold, so that the students were also being able to be identified with their gaps, not just the teachers. So we brought in those coaches. We revamped so many things. We did targeted teaching with specifically for engagement strategies And we wanted to target our PDs off of the observations that were made in the classroom, not just from the teachers, but from the way the students reacted to the teaching. And we would target and build those PDs, those professional developments, so that we are making sure we're just not throwing everything at these teachers. We are giving them constructive training on what deficiencies that were found, not just within us, but from our contractors that came and actually looked. Along with that, our associate principals are doing their own programs. They also were receiving instructional coaching so that they are better equipped to help out the teachers in the classroom, better able to look and observe and be able to understand what's going on as far as the students and being able to meet their needs and meet them where they're at and bring them up and identify the gaps. We used a lot of maps and NWA. That was a huge push to look at that data to find out where our gaps were. We invested a lot into our teachers. I love promoting from within. So a lot of our teachers, it was amazing when you go through troubled times, the people that come up forward and they say, we got this, we can handle this, we want to do the following things. Amazing, amazing teachers that stood up, and they are all now really motivated to work on their own professional development, not just inside the classroom, but outside the classroom. We have made sure that we revamped our curriculum. Our curriculum was very old and it was not streamlined. It was disjointed. So both of the APs went through all of our curriculum and made sure that it fed from grade to grade. And we made sure that it's great if you outline curriculum, but you have to also make sure that your teachers are comfortable using it, that they are trained how to use it, and they believe in it. Because I don't think there's anything worse than having to use curriculum that you don't understand or you don't believe in. And so we were very intentional and very thoughtful about that whole process and how we were going to go about that. So updated curriculum, revamped teaching. We made sure our UIP and our strategic plan included all of these improvements. So it's just not a for now thing, it's a continuous thing that we monitor and revamp as the years go by, sometimes quarterly. Our targeted academic supports, we were able to hire an interventionist, and she specializes just in identifying those gaps, specifically in the middle and the high school. She looks at everything. She's very data-driven. She looks at where we were at to where we need to be. We take all of that data and we revamp the curriculum to meet those specific students. If she has to pull them group by group, academic level by academic level, that's what she does, so that way those students are brought up to where they need to be. If it's tier 1 support or tier 2 support, she's able to do that and identify that. We are currently revamping our MTSS in order to assist all students individually, to make sure that we can close those gaps that everybody is experiencing across the country. So a lot of our pathways for our high school has been mostly just Civil Air Patrol, but starting next year we will have a CTE program as well as a flying program and a Space Corps program. So we want to be able to just provide those students with, find out where their interests are and just promote them, encourage them, and enable them to accomplish those goals so that when they graduate, they have a plan and they're ready for the world. Our Dean of Student Success, that's the interventionist I spoke of earlier. She's been super, super helpful in identifying where those students are, where they need to be, and then bringing the teachers in so that they understand how to identify those gaps and how to reach those students as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our enrollment. You look at the numbers and the numbers for our school and where we've been, we are growing, and they are very well. But I can tell you that the best and the most important number on there is our sustainment number. Our sustainment number of returning students is the highest it's ever been in the history of CMA since 2017. Typically, we would lose about 150 students per year, and we are a little over 41% military students. So some of that you can write off to, well, permanent change of station, parents getting out and going back to where they're from, all of those things, but that was still a very high number. So the fact that we're able to sustain our enrollment and we're seeing those families return not only does it help the culture, but it also helps them academically because we're able to streamline that academics. It's really important that our demographics are understood. Our current authorizer, I don't believe that they quite understand the military culture as much as D11 does. You know, we have, I can speak that, you know, a mom of 2 daughters that I raised almost 30 years in the military. My oldest went to 12 different schools in 17 years. And I can tell you that as much as we try to make sure our kids go to all of the best schools, sometimes it's just not possible. And so they are bounced and bounced and bounced. So no matter where those kids are at when they come to our school, our interventionists, our dean of success is so important and so key for identifying those students and making sure that they have what they need to succeed and identify those gaps. It's so that, number one, they have the confidence to know they can succeed. Number two, they have plans because we have all these different pathways for them to look at. It's not just college, it's not just service academies, it's many things that they're interested in. When we take kids up to fly, because we are the largest Civil Air Patrol squadron in Colorado. We're the second largest in the nation. We have the most flying hours in the entire state. So when our 11-year-olds show up to school and they're scheduled to fly that day, they get to miss school to go fly. And they actually take the stick and fly. A lot of our students have never been out of Colorado Springs. So just to expose them to that piece of something different, something that they may never, ever, ever experience, when they get off of that Cessna, their eyes are as big as saucers and they are ready to do some other things with their life. They are encouraged, they're inspired, and it's just one of the most amazing things I've witnessed as a school leader at CMA. So that piece of that is important because you can call us a niche school because of the Civil Air Patrol piece, but really with the other pathways opening us up, it's not going to be so much that. We're hoping that we can open up to more athletic programs and, you know, transportation and things of those things that make it a little bit easier for our parents. But our enrollment is 34 students higher than it was this time last year, and we are currently still have, you know, it's still early in the spring, so we are estimating to be around the 660, 665 range, if not higher, and that's being very, very conservative with those numbers. Next slide, please. Thank you. So finances. Our finances are the best they've ever been since CMA opened. Our fund balance has grown by 117%, and we anticipate an additional 11% by the end of FY26. We've been able to maintain a sufficient debt-to-service ratio, and we're on track for our $3 million projection for FY25. We have intentionally invested in our staff, focusing on our teachers' salaries. Our past 2 years, our intent to return for our teachers has been 100%. And that's before when 2022 to 23, our teachers were making 30 to 35% less than the Colorado Springs area on average. All of those teachers are still with our school, even though we raised their salaries. They are the right people to be in our school. They are in there for the right reasons is what that tells me. It's a little embarrassing that we weren't paying them better, but I can tell you that we are doing everything we can to make sure we are reinvesting in them. If it's not helping them pay for some PME, or a college, or just supporting them in other things that they want to do in their classroom on top of paying them for what they deserve. And you know, we've reached a lot of financial goals that I myself never thought was possible. I joined CMA when I retired from the Air Force in 2018. After almost 30 years of service, my job was to stand up the military program. I did that, and I stuck around, because of the staff that's there. You will not meet a more dedicated staff than you will at CMA. Those teachers love their students. They know them by name, they know where they live, they know how many brothers and sisters they have, they know what deficits they have at home on the social emotional side. We take much care in even the discipline that we do with our students, and everything is a case-by-case basis. And I can tell you that it's been nothing but pure joy being able to be a part of what this school is becoming now that it's given the right tools and resources that it desperately needed. And I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the people that actually work there. And so one of my struggles is to not operate like rapport, because that's how I operated the last 6 years, is very, 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 very careful with money. And I'm going to continue to do that because I want to see us grow. But that concludes my briefing for now, and I'd like to open up to any questions.
Dr. Comfort, do you have anything additional to add at this point in time from the district's perspective on this application?
Sure. Good evening, Board. Happy to add a few things. I want to first speak to the financial position of CMA. As Ms. Roberts stated, their financial position has strengthened greatly. The primary metrics that we look at for any charter schools, we look at debt to burden ratio, we look at fund balance ratio, we look at cash in hand. Those are all very strong variables from them now. And I would actually point to the last thing on that last side where their financial position is so strong now that they're actually self-funding their own Fund 43, which is their own capital investment plan. That's always a really good indicator of a charter school's ability to maintain their finances, is when they can manage some of their own capital investment as well. I would also add, you heard a few very key strategies around their academic performance, which should sound familiar. Investing in teacher salaries, investing in coaching, observation, and feedback, investing in curriculum, and investing in Tier 1 instruction. Those are our strategies as well. And so I think we believe in them wholeheartedly and look forward to that potential partnership. Final point, just in case it comes up as a question, the DAC has been reviewing this charter application. My communication from them is I can expect their review by Friday. I will absolutely get that to the board, and then we'll have it ready for public review when we come back.
Okay. Anything you want to add from your perspective, Superintendent Gall?
Obviously, I think about the portfolio as a whole. I think particularly as a military town, I think it's high time that we really have a military-focused school. I think the community has said that this is something that's important to them. Can we go back to the enrollment slide? Much of this is about where you're situated. For those who don't know, that CMA's current location backs up to Pete Field, and there's literally a turnstile there. Pete Field, the housing units in Pete Field are District 11 families. So this is an in-district boundary school. You all were at the Capitol last week or the week before to get your Purple Star, I don't want to say award, designation from the governor. This is a school that understands the community that it serves. And although we do have a growing level of support for our military families, particularly at McCullough is our strongest Purple Star school, Jenkins, and we're working with the state to understand why Doherty's application wasn't accepted. It's high time that we think about our portfolio as a whole. And as a father of 3 military kids, enrollment in a school where 50% of your families are PCS mandated on when they move and don't move, I think that sustainability is an important measure. One, I wish I could compare our K-12s to your sustainability. We probably have more movement per family, but there's nothing more challenging for a family than the middle of October when mom or dad comes home and says, guess what, we're moving. And by the way, it's not at the end of the school year. My joke is I used to go play catch with the kids, because if you throw the ball in the air, they focus on catching the ball, so you can say we're moving to Timbuktu, and it gives them a minute to process, to catch the ball before they can react to, I'm not moving to Timbuktu. My daughter sat cross-legged in the house, and we literally had to move her room around her because she physically refused to move in that last move. So I do appreciate the focus that you all have been able to provide regardless of your authorization, but I do think local authorization in a district we have, other than Fountain Fort Carson, which obviously serves the Fort Carson base, we have the highest percentage of Purple Star schools per the portfolio in El Paso County here in District 11. This is a nice niche for us. And I think the parents have said to us, it's not just that you understand what their needs are. I think it's also that you're providing some structure that kind of has withered away in many traditional school environments. Doesn't mean it's for everybody. Doesn't mean that because your superintendent's a retired colonel that we're going to ask all kids to have great creases in their short sleeves. But I do think that there's a great opportunity here for a lot of our families that have been looking for that type of experience that says, hey, we're a military town. I know as a father, I always said that I would have loved to have sent one of my kids to a school where I knew he would have gotten this type of structure and rigor without having to enlist. And just to reiterate a point again, if you bring in a school like Colorado Military Academy, it does not mean that we're seeking to increase enlistment for any of those service branches. This is an opportunity for kids to have structure, for them to have pathways into flying and Air Force specific experiences. And I love the fact that you're thinking of expanding that to the spaces as well, now that Peterson's designation is, at least for the time being, a Space Force base.
Thank you. So open it up for the board for questions at this point in time. And Ms. Roberts, you've been in this, Ms. Roberts, right?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Roberts, you've been in this position for a year, or?
Yeah, this is my second year as the executive director, yes,
And
sir.
how about the two principals behind you?
So both of these individuals were teachers prior to that, and they stepped up as TOSAs to prepare them for the AP positions the year before. But prior to that, Mr. Zakaitis has been at CMA since it began. He was a mighty third grade teacher. And then Mr. Van Norman was a middle school English teacher. He bounced between middle and high school English teacher prior to that.
But they've all been in this position for just about roughly the same time.
This is their first year working as the APs. Yes, sir.
They are APs?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Board questions again. I don't see anybody have any questions, or Director Art, I'll start with you.
Thank you. I have many, and so my question is if we're going to have, just first to the board, is if we will have a work session.
We will get to that at the end of this discussion. If there is a need where there are questions unanswered, I can certainly look to the board for guidance on this if this has got to come at a future time. Right now, I think it's scheduled to come as an action item the first week in May. That's May 7th. And today we are on April 16th, so we have 2 weeks' time, April 23rd and April 30th time. So it just depends on where we are at as a board. We have quite a few agenda items that the board needs to address in the next couple of weeks, including the budget items. So if there is a need after the discussion today, but I would start by asking you questions, Director.
All right, thank you. Why do you and your fellows at the school, why do you want to be part of District 11?
I'm so excited to answer that. So with our current authorizer, as I spoke about a little bit earlier, as much as they try to understand what a military community is, I don't think they completely grasp it. They don't really understand the demographics, the high mobility, and how that can impact your testing, how that can impact your academic level, how that can impact your enrollment and your funding. We're held to a little bit different standard. With District 11 and just being in the Springs area, I feel like we are embraced by the military community and by the understanding of how all of those things can impact us. And so we feel that it would be in our best interest to be in a community that understands us and can support us a whole lot better with understanding all of our challenges as well as all of our strengths.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So I reviewed all of the materials we had available to us on our board docs, which you're not responsible for that necessarily, but I felt it was incomplete. I'll say that to my fellow board members. Aside from the DAC, we don't have any indication of a review of the materials, and there's a little checklist there. It's not checked off. So I don't know if you've provided all the information, so my apologies for that. If you have, I would love to see a copy of your budget for the coming year, as best as you can have it. I know we don't even have our own yet.
No
but
problem.
Maybe one for this year. Reading the CARS report, there are certainly some concerns there.
Sure.
All of the academics, and I understand you've addressed where you see many of the problems lying there, but you're on the school, not necessarily your fault. It's in the third year of its state watch list status. So that's a concern. The CARS report also mentioned the organizational performance narrative and governance, education, et cetera, financial management. Just last year, there were a couple of concerns, and it sounds like they were the same thing, just it hadn't gotten corrected quite yet. So that's a concern. So let me pause there and say, for financial management, do you feel, well, and all of those not compliance or non-compliance items for the organizational performance, do you feel like you're going to have a clean bill, if you will, in their audit there, if they were to do that for this year going into next?
Yes, ma'am. And so, to be completely transparent, of course, the financial issues were our audit not being turned in on time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot due to the auditor that we hired wasn't finding the documents they were supposed to, because it went from a different auditor to a different auditor. In this past year, and actually the year before, our FSO, our financial manager, and a whole lot more than that, was able to secure that. And it was painstaking, and it was very, very difficult and challenging, but we are finally arrived. We finally have the audit process down. So from the years, because it wasn't done properly in the past, it was very hard to get a clean audit out of that. So going forward, it's going to be, all of that will be worked out, because we've done all of the work to make sure that it's a good product, will be on time, and we have the right people working on it. So that's that piece. The board piece that you brought up was the governance piece. And I did supply our budget, so it's in there, but I'm happy to resend whatever you need. And it's very detailed. Also, the board piece that is spoken of is there was not a lot of board governance policy. So 18 months ago, we hired Aligned Influence, and he is a board governance expert. And he's been working hand in hand with our board to make sure that the trainings are done, to make sure that we understand all of the working pieces and how to be a strong board, the compliance of the board, what the board's responsibilities and accountabilities are. So we've been working with him for the past 18 months. And I feel that the board is the best that it's ever been. And I've been not on the board, but sitting and briefing the board for the past 7 years. But that was included in our packet too. But again, I'm happy to give that stuff.
I think that's an us thing, not a you thing,
Okay.
truly. So it's just that gotta get it asked for,
Sure.
and then pursue it. Let me look real quick. Let's see. There were other things, of course. Transportation. There was a mention of transportation, and that currently CMA does not offer transportation, but you hope to from a set area. And so my question is, are you expecting transportation arrangements from District 11 if this transfer occurs?
No, we are not expecting that. We realize, and we were briefed about the critical shortage of bus drivers, but we are working on a workaround. We have done a market analysis on contracting our own buses, or possibly using District 11's buses, as long as we get the safety, the CDL, all of the check marks to drive one, because that's where the critical shortage is. So we are working towards that, and we've actually budgeted towards getting our own bus.
Okay.
And we would have that follow-on conversation part of the educational services agreement. We have a varying way that we support transportation for different charters that are authorized by District 11 and by some schools that are actually not part of District 11. We are actually in some procurement conversations right now of selling some excess buses we have to neighboring districts, and would continue to provide that support to either CMA or any other district that's asking. We have roughly 90 buses for about 50 routes, and so sometimes it's not just the shortage of the drivers. Some institutions actually have shortage of capital to procure a new bus, and so buying a gently used D11 transportation vehicle can be an opportunity for both CMA or other institutions, as well as helping for us to produce some revenue offset. But most of those transportation questions, if it was a desire by CMA, we would handle in an educational services agreement if authorization was approved.
Okay. And last question, I have to go back. Oh, accreditation. So this might be a question for Superintendent Gall. Our accreditation score as a district has come up. If we take on a charter school that is on the watch list, does that impact our accreditation?
It does, just in the same way that Thomas McLaren joined the portfolio last year with all students at elementary, middle, and high school being at or above grade level. CMA presents a challenged academic set of numbers that is more consistent with our schools in the Southeast. So I don't think it's outside of the normal part of our portfolio for that part of town, but it would certainly, if somebody was looking for a fair share score, 600 kids of CMA being at about the same level of the Southeastern portfolio would offset what's going to be a very high positive uplift from Thomas McLaren's 1,000 kids coming into our accreditation score for this academic year. So I think it would be more reflective of the community as a whole if you were to see the demographics, socioeconomical, free and reduced lunch, and how far kids are behind that CMA takes on. It's very consistent with our other schools in our portfolio, where Thomas McLaren was definitely an outlier on the positive side.
That makes me wonder how much of the increase is actually just due to Thomas McLaren instead of our own work, which would be unfortunate.
Well, to correct that, the numbers that were reported this year that we keep touting were without Thomas McLaren. So Thomas McLaren doesn't count until this next year's numbers come in.
That's a good clarification. Thank you. All right, that's the end of my questions for now. I'm again hoping for additional materials. I do have a concern given the resolution, it does state that CMA is a high-performing school, and that's not quite accurate, so I'll need that to come out of the resolution for voting for it, if it comes to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Ott. The specific thing that you requested was the budget for the school. I'm trying to keep track of.
We're keeping track, and we can provide that via email and well before posting time for the board to review.
If you can
I
provide.
think we already have it all, right?
Yes, CMA provided all of those documents. We did upload more documents than we typically do for a transfer application, but I understand we might want to see the raw budget data. We did review that. I confirmed their findings related to those budget numbers in their presentation, but I'm happy to send those documents to everybody. And if you want to talk about that review, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, and then looking at your 2024 school performance framework, what you ended up scoring was 47.1 out of 100, which puts you in the improvement category. And Ms. Olson, if you can pull the clock to the bottom, that's where the numbers are up there. It's 47.1 out of 100. That would put you in the improvement category, but because of lack of low participation, that's why you were downgraded one level. And you said that that was an administrative error or learning process, and you addressed it for the current CMAS cycle.
Yes, sir, it was. It was an administrative error. It was all on our participation rate of scoring 94.7. So what we gleaned from that was making sure we code students as soon as they leave the school. Before, we were holding them into a file and then not doing it day to day or student by student. So we have a whole checks and balances process and system that we have developed as the school that we're currently using just for CMAS to make sure every student is coded correctly, because that's exactly why we missed the mark on that, was the administrative issue.
Okay. Dr. Nelson.
Yeah, can you speak a little to what percent of your students are on grade level, if you have that off the top of your head, for math and ELA?
Do you guys have that off the top of your head?
And you
I
can
can
get
get
it.
that for you.
Okay.
We'll send over, I'll have Dr. Colicky connect with their staff so we can provide a similar report in the way that we normally report it. Much of that is how we manipulate the data that comes from CDE, but we'll translate that and post it prior to coming to action for you to be able to see kind of the head and the tail, the way we talk about it. And then Nicole and her team can address those questions if there are some based upon that.
Okay, or like I went back, and when we were doing the Mitchell presentation, I went back and looked at what our 2024 presentation, fall presentation of our CMAS scores and how we've moved up, that we're now like 37.5% ELA and 29% math, and we're gaining. So I just wanted to get a sense of where your school was at. So whether it's that format or if it's your CMAS scores, however is fine. And then I had a question on what % of your enrollment are actually D11 boundaried students and what are out of D11 boundaried? If you need to get that later, that's fine.
I'll have to get that later,
Okay.
yes, ma'am. I can tell you that the majority are D11 students. We have a few outliers, Calhan, Ellicott, even Woodland Park, but the majority are D11, but I'll get you those numbers.
Okay, this next question is for Dr. Comfort, and it's kind of pivoting off of that. For transparency's sake, can you speak to the MLO dollars that previously we've been able to take the inflation rate and compensate our charter schools using the inflation rate and the impact that has to MLO, and I suspect we'll be able to do the same this winter, this coming winter. So do you have a number ready, or you can get that to me later on, that based on their enrollment?
Absolutely. So two clarifying points on that. Thank you for the question, Director Nelson. I do want to remind the board, if we go back a couple of years in time and we had this conversation about expanding the portfolio, remember we had the conversation about expensive dirt and how at that point in time, in declining enrollment, the addition of charter schools could be a little costly. Because we are out of declining enrollment, there is no financial impact to our general fund for we can bring in 1 million charter school students, and now it's a 1-for-1. It no longer negatively impacts our financial position as a district. Secondly, the MLO, which is, as we all know, funded by our entire community, whether they come to District 11 schools or not, we have been able to use the inflation factor that the board approves to offset any increase in MLO funding that an increase in the charter school numbers would require. We have not had to negatively impact any existing PIP or part of the MLO. We are prepared to bring that exact same solution to you again in a plan amendment. We shared this with the MLO committee last night. If the board remembers, you approved an inflation factor of about 5.3%, which is going to get us about $3.5 million in new MLO money. What we are prepared to do is take, if the board approves CMA, it will be about $2.4 million of MLO money. That's new money. It will cover the CMA portion, and then I'm going to bring you a plan to use that additional money in a different way. But so we are prepared to move forward if the board adopts CMA as a part of the portfolio without any negative impact to the remainder of the MLO.
Thanks for the clarification. So it was the inflation rate we already took this past winter that will cover there. Okay.
Yes, so we are prepared to cover CMA, and then next year's inflation will be its own conversation.
Sure, okay, great. And just to the point that many of their students are D11 boundaried students, and their families are taxpayers in our community, and so they absolutely should get their fair share of these MLO dollars. And so just that's my 2 cents on that. And that's all the questions I have. Thank you for presenting, and look forward to a future partnership, if it's just me speaking as an individual.
Thank you so much.
Director Jurgensen.
I'll be brief in my comments from what I heard and from the questions here. Having a really stable staff is amazing, something that we haven't been able to achieve with our schools, even though we are putting lots of things in place for that. I think that the synergy that we could have down the road with your Civil Air Patrol and your JROTC and our own programs around airplanes and our JROTC programs would be kind of cool to see what that looks like. And to Mr. Dahl's point, the niche that you guys have with more the traditional character education piece and with the military, character development, I see as a complement to what we're doing in our schools. So as a complement to our portfolio of choice that we want to offer our families. So I know you've had academic challenges. You're not quite there yet, but you know the problem and you're identifying it, just like we're all doing. And I just think it's a nice addition to what we have. The question I had was, do you have a SAC, a school accountability committee for your school?
Yes, sir, we sure do. And
Okay.
we meet almost, I know we're only required to meet quarterly, but I usually meet with them after every board meeting, just because they're very involved. They're very helpful. They're great guidance, and so we usually do that at least once a month, and we do have a very active SAC.
Okay, and so to that point, I did have a hard time on the website. It looks like it's more of a national website for your Colorado Military Academy, and so I couldn't drill down to your local board and SAC meetings to find those. So if you could maybe send the link to the board or whatever, that would be good to see that calendar and all that.
Absolutely. We just redid our website and stood it up like 2 weeks ago, so we'll make sure that that is user-friendly and get you those links.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Director Carey.
Thanks. I just want to really briefly speak to academics and then also just generally about charter schools. I was trying to find some of the numbers here and refresh my memory as to kind of what the numbers were for Eastlake and Roosevelt. But when speaking to kind of like the weak academic performance, we have schools in our portfolio that are lower in terms of the SPF. And I think it's worth just taking a step back to remember that one of the things we've been doing as a strategy over the last few years is taking schools in our geographical area that are authorized by the state and bringing them into our system. The reason being, I'm trying to remember the numbers that we quoted earlier, was it something like 8,000 kids in our geographical area are not in our system?
Yeah.
Am I remembering the number right?
Could be higher.
10,000? So again, there are parents who are choosing other schools. If you go back to the enrollment slides, I'm trying to remember the exact number for this school. It's something on the order of
600.
There we go. So that's 600 students that are being served by what, right, the Colorado Military Academy is doing. So I think it's just important to recognize this is something that parents want. This fills a need that parents have. And I think it's a good thing that as a district and as a board, we're responsive to those desires.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? I think the administration has been taking notes on what the board request has been, and those will be captured, and the board will be provided those feedback over the next week or 2 weeks, the questions that you asked as far as information that you need. And again, to the board also, if you need additional information as you are reviewing this application and you are coming up with additional questions, please do reach to Superintendent Gall over the next week or so. The other thing that I would encourage board to do, and I may do this myself, would be in the next couple of weeks when I find some time, I'm going to stop at your school and just take a tour of your school at your convenience. I'll contact somebody from your staff.
You're welcome anytime, any
Yeah.
of you, anytime.
Okay, just to get an idea as to what that environment is, and I would encourage board members that want to get involved in that capacity to just visit the school, and that way you get a one-on-one environment to also have some of your questions or concerns answered, or maybe just a visit to the school would help you answer some of those questions. I know that CMA was in front of the board 2 years back. There was some concerns about the financial stability of the school at that time, some operational concerns. Looks like those have been addressed in the past couple of years financially. From what we are hearing from Dr. Comfort, you are sound and stable, and you are able to handle your day-to-day operations, and there has been some changes in the operations of the school, you being a new executive director and other people stepping in leadership roles as well. The biggest concern that has been addressed out here is your academic performance at this time. When I look at the CARS report and it compares where you are as a school with District 11 schools on an average in just about every category, you are underperforming District 11 schools. But that doesn't mean that if you put a clear vision and a strategy, you would be able to overcome some of those challenges. Looks like you are addressing that, but that's the biggest concern from my end. my questions to you when I visit your school would be more on that academic integrity. What are the systems and processes that you have in place to overcome some of those challenges academically? And I think we can benefit from some of the opportunities that are there in your school, and vice versa. You can also benefit from some of the structures and systems that District 11 has in place. So if we go through this process and you become part of the D11 school, I would strongly encourage you to lean on District 11 supports and what we are doing, so it can be a mutually beneficial process. I don't see any other questions. Superintendent Gall, do you have any closing thoughts on this subject?
I just appreciate the work that the team, both at CMA and D11, have put forward. We really look forward to the DAC's feedback and certainly to some public comment supports from CMA at the board meeting in the first week of May.
Okay, and going back to Director Ott's comments or request at the beginning of the meeting, I think you addressed all your questions at this point in time. If you have additional questions, reach out to Superintendent Gall. With that in mind, and I don't see any outlying questions with the board, this is not going to come as a work session. It'll come as an action item in 3 weeks' time. And within that time, if individual board members have questions or concerns, please reach out to Superintendent Gall, and he will try to gather that information. And you can also take the opportunity to visit the school if your schedule or time allows. Thank you. Thank you for you all being here. Okay, moving to the next item on the agenda. This is policy IKF graduation requirements alignment. The board unanimously approved the revised high school graduation requirement during the April 2nd regular board meeting. There are policy and regulations related to these requirements that require board's review and consideration. And from what I see on the board docs, these are a policy and regulations that are up for repeal at this point in time. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. X, to give us some context and set up this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, President Malpacum. Members of the board, just putting some closing pieces together on the IKF that we passed at the last regular board meeting. We do have two regulations in the packet, as well as two regulations attached to IKF, a policy IKFA, and an exhibit that we are going to all wrap up in a package. We went back, Ms. Olson went back and discovered inside of board docs that the last time IKF was brought forward, the two regulations were brought forward as well, so the board did take a vote on those. So since the board took a vote on those, we want to tie those into IKF for the next board meeting so that those can be repealed, since there was a formal vote, and not move forward with those two regulations because of they're outdated. There's also the exhibit in there that we wanted to tie in, which will be a new exhibit, just so you can see that. And then policy IKFA, we went back through, we could not find anything in board docs about any board action on that, nor could we find any work product related to any changes to that policy since it was revised the last time in 1989, I believe it was. So we are recommending that that policy be repealed because inside of the new IKF is language about early graduation. And this also addresses an issue that was brought forward by Director Ott when we were up here last time.
Okay, open it up for board comments or questions. So what is being requested right now is a repeal of policy IKFA.
IKFA repeal, as well as a repeal of the two regulations to IKF. They were included in a board vote.
And then the draft exhibit is going to be attached to the original policy IKF.
Correct. That will be the new exhibit attached to IKF.
Okay, board questions on what is being proposed. Director Ott.
Thank you. On the graduation requirements 2029 graphic, yes, this one here that is being brought up. If you'll scroll up, Melissa, that might be, people could see the English version. So just a couple of things. One, there in that middle section that showing individual career and academic plan, ICAP. You've defined ICAP. I appreciate that. And that'll come up later with something else. Explore and favorite careers and explore and favorite post-secondary options. I don't know if you can come up with another word than favorite. It's kind of a social media, informal slang almost. And if I'm understanding what you're trying to say, I'm going to, yes, maybe something around interested. Just, it's a consideration. I'm not going to dictate your document here, but I like to try. So just let's favorite careers. It's not really a proper verb. The other thing, if you can see at the bottom of the screen there, the required course credits, academically ready learner credits, and continuous learner. Nowhere on this page do I find out what PSWR pathway is. 15 credits aligned to ICAP, defined earlier. PSWR. I mean, I sit here a lot of the school year and I can't remember what PSWR is. So I'm guessing.
Workforce.
There we go, readiness. Thank you. It wasn't in my head when I was reading this though, and I don't think it's gonna be there for a parent looking at this or a student. So if we can define that somewhere else, that would be great. Those are my critiques of that. Everything else looks great. Thank you.
Okay. You got the feedback from Director Art. No other questions? With the recommendations that came from Director Art, is the board comfortable moving this to consent? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the amended fiscal year 24-25 budget. And I see Dr. Comfort coming in. There could be nobody having the, so this is new information again. Dr. Comfort, can you provide some context to the board on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening again, board. If the board recalls, over a past few meetings, we approved a plan amendment coming out of the MLO for taking non-recurring MLO money and funding a few things. One is $1.5 million in curriculum. That is supplementing the general fund curriculum money that we put towards an ELA purchase in the mid-year budget to do a K-12 ELA continuum. And then $100,000 for our triannual MLO review. So that went through all of the steps. It went through the MLO committee multiple times. It went to the DAC. It came to you for non-action. It came to you for action. 4 months later, we're ready to allocate that money. But because we are now transferring money across funds, it is an amended budget. We typically only do this in the actual budget cycle. So the budget build for a year or the mid-year budget. We did not want to wait for the budget build for next year to order curriculum, so that's why I'm bringing it to you as an amended budget. One other piece of clarification, you'll see that the amended budget is for $1.5 million, even though the total non-recurring expenditure is going to be 1.6. That's because we purchase curriculum out of the general fund. So I am genuinely moving money from fund to fund in $1.5 million for curriculum. That $100,000 for the MLO, it's already allocated in the MLO. I'm just moving it to the MLO account where it's funded. So that's why it's $1.5 million and not $1.6 million. But this is just to execute on the plan amendment that has received everybody's approval, including yours.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this item from the board? I don't see any questions. Since this is a budget item, I will move it to action, just in case there is any public comments as well regarding this. So can this come at the May 7th, or is there a timeline that you need this?
I believe the May 7th timeline will still allow for the curriculum purchase that we have planned for our ELA.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, with that, we are at the end of our non-action items. Moving on to the calendar review. We do have 2 successive Wednesdays that are coming up. Most likely we will have a work session, and each one of those Wednesdays in May, we could potentially see 2 weeks when we would not have board meetings because of graduations during that time frame. And also the May 14th meeting, that's when Superintendent Gall would be in Denver for the State Board of Education presentation. So that could potentially be a week when we may not have a board meeting since he is not going to be present and some of his staff members may not also be present. But it's a work in progress. We will look at the agenda requests that are there and try to accommodate that over the next couple of weeks and May 7th, and then understanding that in May graduations and other things may take priority and we may not have a board meeting. With that, seeing no further business, if there are no objections, okay. Director Nelson.
Just wanted to let you know that next Wednesday and the 30th, I will need to leave around 5 o'clock for performances that my children have at their schools. So if you're planning your agenda, and I think that the budget maybe is coming at some point in the next couple of weeks, if you could put that at the top end of the meeting, that might be a good idea since I'll have to leave early. Thank you.
Both those weeks you said you'll be leaving at 5 o'clock?
Yes.
That's what, and you are not going to be joining at any point in time later in the evening for those meetings?
I guess it depends if you're still going or not.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll keep that in mind and consideration. Okay, seeing no further business, if there are no objections, this meeting will adjourn at 6:47 p.m.